appreciate y'all coming through here today. If you haven't done so, smash a button, lick it, flick it. It looked like the YouTube side actually went and kicked itself completely.
Oh, we were on YouTube?
Yeah.
Oh. Did not do that.
Because it's the United States. You don't think of, I call it soccer, you know, it's just easy.
Showing
Play
we're
football,
live.
and they have two footballs, right? They call it football. But most people never thought they'd see
It should be a new one.
It's turned out to be the most successful World Cup from the standpoint of what's happening and then they've ever had. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. Romy Ortiz with Framework USA. I have one question for you and one question for Vice President Jamie Banks on fraud. What's your message to the New Jersey leaders pushing back against ICE operations at the Hall?
About ICE?
Yes.
We're about NICE, as they call it, NICE. The NICE facility. I'd love to change the name. Go on NICE. They do a great job. And it's all paid for protesters. You know, you can see by the signs. The signs are all made by the same beautiful factory. It's a printing plant. In fact, I'm thinking about using it. They do such a nice job. These aren't protesters. These people are fake. They're all paid for. And I will tell you, Tom Holman and that whole group, and now Mark Wayne is so incredible. Mark Wayne, you want to just respond to that? We run the finest facilities anywhere in the world of their type. But we have some horrible killers. We have killers. We have guys that have murdered numerous people in there. And these are the people they're trying to protect. There's nobody that runs a facility like we do. Mark Wayne?
Yeah, it shows that this radical left Democrats' priorities when they decide to go out and protest a detention center where we're housing rapists, child predators, murderers, drug dealers, and they choose morally of all the time to go protest something that they say that that it's because they're on hunger strike and there's only a handful of individuals that refuse to eat because they want their ethnic group or their ethnic right food. Well, they go back to the country and get whatever food they want. The fact is, we're giving them the calories they want. This isn't Holiday Inn. We're giving them sanitation. But for the Democrats and the governor, like Governor Sherrill and Senator Kim and Senator Booker, to go out and do something like this of all the days is very frustrating. And we see Antifa signs are literally out there. The local police literally refusing to respond. They barricade it, not allowing our police to come in and out. ICE has to go out there, remove the barricade, and then you have one of the senators complain because he got splattered with a pepper ball. I'm sorry, you probably should have been there.
You know, one thing I'll say about that, the local police, I know a lot of the police, they're phenomenal. They love us, but they're told not to do anything.
That's right.
They love us. They love him. They even love me a lot. And I'm in New Jersey a lot. It's great. I mean, I think it's a great place. It's got a group of people running it now that are having a hard time. But they really like this administration. They love this administration more than any administration they've ever had. And they're thanking me all the time. And then I see those guys going up and down the Jersey Turnpike with their big, beautiful hats on. I say, I'd like to look like that someday. You know, they're great. No, these are great people. And they love him, and they love ICE, and they love the Border Patrol. And they're not allowed to talk to anybody. It's like, but it all comes from the top. They have to follow us. They want to keep
this
their
thing
jobs.
off, man.
Might have to send Brad a new link.
A gas tax holiday.
He's
Well, it's something
ready.
we might talk about. Let's see what happens over the next week, 2 weeks. A lot of good things are happening.
No,
No, I was invited. I
Maybe,
was going to go on Wednesday.
maybe
but they
just
closed it out very
update.
quickly.
So,
They-
like you
Nolan,
did to
great
me,
guys.
it helped me
As you know,
update my
George
link, so
Madison's
now
great. He's having a good year.
I didn't have to go back
Boy,
and
what a team.
fucking
They
search
won all their
for
games. They
it.
really they have some great players. I think I'll be going to
I'll
one of the games. I
post
was
it in
invited
the
by,
live
numerous
show
people.
chat.
And Jim. And I think
No,
that's
no,
great.
no,
Great
no,
to see it.
no.
You know, the Knicks have
All right.
they really suffered for years. And they're doing right. They're doing right now.
Yeah, we don't want anybody.
No, the basics. No, I went for some of it, because it's a memorandum of understanding the speed.
I don't know,
One of
that
the things
does
that will happen
make
is
it
the strait will open
interesting at
immediately.
times.
That'd be perfect. I'm not going to do this. I didn't do this to get the
I don't want to restart all that
again.
again, no.
Barack Hussein Obama. What a horrible agreement that was. It was a setback for this country, for the whole world. The Middle East would have blown itself up. No, I would like to have the countries we're talking about, with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and the others. We'd like to have them immediately join the, and Steve Woodcock is working on that with Jared and some others, but we'd like to have them join the Abraham Accords. It'll be historic if they do it. I think they owe that to us, to be honest. I think because that really would be a tremendous sign. And I think those countries owe it to us. Steve, are you going to get
Same
something?
link off the last DM that I sent you all the way back in April. Chucked you another one. Thank you, Neuro, for gifted subscription. That landed on RPP. Nice.
I don't think VPN should matter. I think that's just for you. I don't think it should matter with EV Mux. Bro, come on.
You still have your web. You have to allow the website to see your camera and your microphone. You can then shut your stuff off afterward, but you have to allow it the first time, and you have to tell it that you're okay with it via permissions. Just like everything else.
I'm not sure we should make the deal. If
Yeah,
they don't sign.
you just
wanna
have
know
to
the-
allow
If they don't
it
sign to join the Abraham Accords, I don't know.
through
We
your
have countries in there already. UAE, great countries, both countries, and it's turned out to be so good, so effective, and so we're requesting strongly that they join. It'll be great. It'll be great for Saudi Arabia. It'll be great for Qatar, Kuwait, the whole group.
So the Iran deal might be contingent on more countries joining.
I don't know. I don't want to say that. I'm not going to give you what's contingent, what's not. I can say that we can make a good deal right now, but maybe not a great deal. And if it's not a great deal, we're not making it. So because we can make a great deal with this guy right here, and but it's it's a lot nastier. Probably wouldn't go as quickly. We'll be talking about it as quickly, but it would be foolproof. But I think we're doing very well, Steve. I think we're doing pretty well in terms of the negotiation. But we'll see. If it's not going to be a real deal, because Obama had that horrible JCPOA, whatever it was the worst deal. It was a path for Iran to have a nuclear weapon very quickly. Years ago, they would have had a nuclear weapon. We might not be here talking about it right now. They would have had a nuclear weapon. And frankly, Obama picked the wrong country. He should have picked another country. I won't tell you what it was. But he picked the wrong country when he picked Iran. But we have things understood now with Iran. It's been nasty. They've lost their leaders. They've lost. And it really is regime change. We didn't set out for regime change. But by the fact that we're dealing with a totally different group of people than we were at the beginning. And frankly, I find them to be much more reasonable. I actually find them to be smarter. But I find them to be much more reasonable. This is regime change. One regime is gone. Another regime is gone. We're dealing with the third. pieces of it, because some of them are gone too. And I find them, I think, how can you have a stronger regime change than that, you know? So I do find that. I'd like to thank you all very much. We're doing great. Our country is doing fantastically well, and this group of people is outstanding. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're all done here. So then, what's that? We'll go here. Close up that other tab. I got a bunch of tabs left. There's a whole shitload of stuff open. So then, when it comes down to it, there's a couple people that I have in that description line. And that was Jamie Dimon and Scott Bessent. They both had something to do within the last few days. They talked to a couple other people. They talked to Fox News. And when it comes down to it, it really seriously had something to do with how things changed from dipshit too late to Kevin Warsh. So then as I was looking around to try finding anything about Kevin Warsh, there really isn't anything that's recent, but there's something that I found from the Hoover Institute from back about, does it say 10 months ago? And it's really seriously relevant. It's really seriously relevant. This thing says it's an hour long in itself. We know how we do. We speed it up. We speed it up, make it more interesting. We'll go to 125. Start it off, or should we just let's just do 1-5? Fuck it. We'll go all the way there. Put some words on the screen. Everybody feeling okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Astrid says, "Fell asleep, fuckers. So be nice." What? I mean, what? Did I put you to sleep?
The Federal Reserve System, charged for more than a century now with maintaining price stability, with fighting inflation. How's the Fed doing? Our guest today is here to say, not as well as it should be. Kevin Warsh on Uncommon Knowledge now. Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. A native of upstate New York, Kevin Warsh earned his undergraduate degree at Stanford and his law degree at Harvard. Mr. Warsh spent the early years of his career on Wall Street and in Washington. In 2006, President George W. Bush appointed him to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, where he served until 2011. Note that Mr. Warsh was on the Fed during the financial crisis of...
I mean, does that make you feel more comfortable that you know that it was George Bush that actually appointed this guy to the Federal Reserve Board at first? Not necessarily. Not necessarily like, oh, that guy.
2008, the worst financial crisis in more than half a century. Mr. Warsh now divides his time between New York, where he works in an investment firm, and Stanford, where he is a fellow here at the Hoover Institution. Kevin, welcome back to Uncommon Knowledge.
It's great to be back. You hid the most important thing, which is the investment firm I happen to work for, the greatest investor in the history of the world, a guy named Stan Druckenmiller, but you were trying to keep that discreet. I appreciate that.
No.
I just wanted to boast about my friend and partner.
You keep going because I want him to appear on the show sooner or later. We'll start buttering him up right now. All right, Kevin, here's the first question. Created a century and a decade ago, the Federal Reserve is the one institution in the nation charged with maintaining the value of our currency, the dollar. Two quotations. The late legendary investor Charlie Munger, quote, "Destroy the currency and God knows what will happen." Here's the second quotation. This comes from your remarks this past April to an organization of bankers called the Group of 30, and I've plucked from it a few of your descriptions of the Fed today. Institutional drift, failure to satisfy its statutory remit, contributed to an explosion of federal
It's the
spending,
bullet points.
outsized...
Go ahead.
Did he say the group of 30?
Yes.
He did, didn't he? Yeah. Oh. Shit. He rubs elbows with the group of 30. Roy. Rockefellers. Yeah. Top level. Right, go ahead.
No, you're good. So then Kevin Warsh on the Federal Reserve institutional drift, failure to satisfy its statutory remit, contributed to the explosion of federal spending, outsized role of underperformance. These are things that this guy thinks of what's going on. He's really seriously gone to these levels. And I think that's why Donald Trump actually liked him, is he called out a lot of the bullshit that was going on in the Federal Reserve or whatever. Still, it's a George Bush point. It makes me freaking not really seriously care for the guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Well, that was the thing I heard was the Group of 30, which is the Bilderberg Group, otherwise known as.
Well, not the Committee of 300. It's the Group of 30.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, when he's just small, tight.
Role and underperformance. Kevin Warsh, you are attacking a sacred institution, the institution on which every one of us depends every single day for the integrity of the money we make and the money we spend. What do you think you're doing?
In central banking, we are taught to keep our criticisms quite closeted. So I didn't do a very good job of that. In those same remarks, Peter, I described this as a love letter more than a cold critique. You might not have taken it as the love letter. I'm not sure the current incumbents did.
I let the lovey-dovey stuff drop.
It's a love letter because the institution's as important as your setup would suggest. It's a love letter because if the institution can reform itself, then there can be great things for the institution and the country. But it does mean that it's time to get things back on track. I should say one other thing. This is our third experiment at a central bank in the United States, and it's our third experiment not because the first two went so well; they went poorly.
Right.
This isn't like winning a third Super Bowl, Peter, where the more you get, the better. And the first two failed because they lost the consent of the governed. They lost their ability to deliver on what they promised. And this isn't a history lesson, but you can think about the Jacksonians of prior times. Say that central bank seems like they're trying to focus, and they're all preoccupied with those special interests on the East Coast, and they've lost track of what's happening to us in the center of the country. It's a version of what worries me today. And so the central bank's going on more than 100 years, and if they reform themselves, they're going to have another great 100. Absent that, I worry.
All right. So I want to return to your remarks in a moment, but first, take me through. I'm a layman in these matters. You're a skilled central banker and investor. You know this world. I don't. So take me through. I've got a couple of very elementary questions. Give me a moment to set up this question. The Federal Reserve System is established in 1913, possesses the power. This may be something of an oversimplification, but it possesses the power to set interest rates and regulate the money supply in the interest of achieving price stability. Those are big powers. How has it been doing? These are remarks by Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman in 1994. Quote, "There is no institution in the United States that has such a high public standing and such a poor record of performance. The Federal Reserve began operations in 1914 and presided over a doubling of prices during World War I. It produced a major collapse in 1921. The major villain in the Great Depression was unquestionably the Federal Reserve System. Since that time, it has presided over a doubling of prices since World War II. It financed the inflation of the 1970s. The Federal Reserve System has done far more harm than good, and I have long been in favor of abolishing it." Close quote. Kevin, why do we need the Federal Reserve System?
So
none of this is new to you. Milton Friedman was here at Stanford when you were an undergraduate.
So Milton,
I mean, why do we need the Federal Reserve? Something that's supposed to be there to regulate the money.
Right. But nobody controls it other than them themselves in the 30, the Group of 30. Like, we need to get rid of it altogether. It is not anything to do with the federal government just because it has the name federal or the word federal in the name. I don't think a lot of people know that.
Right?
was blessed to be a student of his, and when he came here, he had a huge effect on not just me, but generations of students that followed. I've spent some considerable time in the archives of the Hoover Institution looking at what Milton would say, for example, the Federal Reserve Chairman. There's a beautiful book by our own Jennifer Burns that includes some of that correspondence, but I had them search and give me all the letters that went back and forth between Paul Volcker and Milton Friedman and Alan Greenspan.
Okay, so give us the dates. Volcker is appointed Fed Chairman by Jimmy Carter in 78, 77?
In the middle of the Carter administration. I don't have the precise date.
And then Ronald Reagan reappoints him, and he serves until nearly the end of the Reagan administration, correct?
Correct.
And then Alan Greenspan succeeds him and serves until...
He served 17 years until Ben Bernanke shows up.
in the middle of the crisis.
In 2006.
2006, preceding the crisis. Sorry.
The only reason why I know that is I recall being a junior White House staffer when I found out that not only had Chairman Bernanke, who had come to the White House from the Federal Reserve and was going back to serve the big shoes of Alan Greenspan, but he wanted me to come with him and take his old job as Fed governor. So I remember that. I remember that date.
All right, okay.
And in that correspondence of Milton, Milton, the thing that's amazing about him is he was constantly revisiting his priors. He's constantly asking whether the data and conclusions he came to one year were still relevant the next, whether his judgments on the institution were still relevant the next. And in much of the correspondence during the Volcker years and the Greenspan years, he was quite comforted by changes in approach, by new ways of thinking about the economy, by success that would come to be known as the Great Moderation. So I wouldn't say that Milton thought that the Federal Reserve was a terrible institution. He thought they had bad periods and good. I can only speculate.
I was trying to complete everything that I had on my docket within a 12-hour span, Dom. We just got into this first 15 minutes of hour 7. Let's go.
Come on, Dom.
What he would say about the great inflation of the last half a dozen years and how he would have foreseen it, he would have warned of it, and in all likelihood the Fed wouldn't have listened.
All right, so one more of these elementary questions, and again, Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman was famous for saying, quote, inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Now, if inflation is a monetary phenomenon and the Fed is in charge of the money supply, inflation is always the fault, ultimately, of the Fed. Why don't you describe what Paul Volcker did? When Carter appointed Volcker, you'll know this, I'm just grasping at memories here. When Carter appointed Volcker, I believe we were suffering the highest inflation since the Civil War. And by the time Paul Volcker left office, inflation was right down to 2% or thereabouts.
Almost.
Almost 2%. So Milton Friedman, and the Fed is always responsible?
Yeah, so I believe what...
What's up? What's the laugh?
Sweets just asked Frogbot, how are the Federal Reserve and the sinking of the Titanic connected?
You might have to ask that question again, Sweets, because it might have been too close to me just asking that question. So that's probably why it didn't pop up. So if you ask it again now, it'll probably pop up. Just can't have too many questions so close to each other.
Yeah, Frogbot's a little slow on the uptick.
I'll stop with all my fucking sarcastic questions so other people can ask it.
I'm done asking you questions, too, because I wanted a real answer and got something not even close.
You asked for give me more details on what?
On the previous question, I'd asked it.
Yeah, it doesn't do that.
Right. It picked up on the billionaire thing that Clay had asked earlier, like, how do I become a millionaire in a week or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I become a millionaire
right.
by Friday without doing any work?
It has the memory of a goldfish.
Right, exactly. It can give you a great answer, but only if you give it the chance
right.
to.
Right.
Oh, here we go.
Why'd you ask it 2 times? Spicy sea myth time. They're connected mostly in debunked conspiracy theories, claiming Titanic opponents of the future Fed were assassinated and the Federal Reserve Act could pass. Historians say the sinking was an accident. Yeah, well, when it comes...
I had never heard of that. Is that true?
Yeah, because every single last person that was on the boat other than J.P. Morgan. Go look at all the list of all the people that were on. They're all bankers. Every single last banker except for J.P. Morgan was on that boat.
Oh.
Yeah, there's some shit that historians say. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Historians say, but other people don't say.
It's an iceberg. How do you not steer away from it? I mean, how do you set that all up? Do you find the most suicidal captain you can? That's weird.
I don't know.
And by the time Paul Volcker left office, inflation was right down.
You can probably pay for just about anything.
Right.
Yeah, go crash a ship into an iceberg and your family's taken care of for the next 5 generations. Or something. I don't know. It's late. The thoughts are getting crazy.
Who the fuck is Virgie? Why would I ask Virgie?
We were suffering the highest inflation since the Civil War. And by the time Paul Volcker left office, inflation was right down to 2% or thereabouts.
Almost.
Almost 2%. So Milton Friedman, and the Fed is always responsible?
Yeah, so I believe what Milton and you just channeled, which is inflation is a choice. As you said at the beginning of this setup, inflation and ensuring price stability was granted to the Federal Reserve by the Congress, most recently in a review of its statutes in the 1970s, so that there would be one agency that would be responsible for prices. No more blaming the other guy. We're giving the baton to you, the central bank. Go after it and get it. Now, you wouldn't know from recent commentary of the last several years that inflation were a choice. In fact, during the run-up to the Great Inflation of the last 5 or 6 years, what did we hear about the causes of inflation? It was because of Putin in Ukraine.
Yes.
It was
Right. And then we went ahead and we ran things like the Inflation Reduction Act that actually increased inflation as opposed to reducing it like it actually said. They fucking lie to us right straight through our fucking teeth. And then they packed that bill with a whole bunch of shit that had nothing to do with it.
because of the pandemic and supply chains. Well, Milton would be outraged to hear that, and in my own subtle way, I was troubled to hear it as well. Those things lead to a change in prices. After all, in market economy, the prices change in Walmart every day. That's how the market economy works. It's not the central bank's role to police those prices, but that's not what inflation is. That's a one-time change in the price level of a widget. Inflation is what happens if that one-time change in the price level becomes self-fulfilling. That is, higher prices beget higher prices. That means inflation ends up finding its way into every kitchen table and every boardroom because you don't know as a decision maker what the price level is going to be. That's not about Putin and the pandemic. That's about the Federal Reserve. That's about the central bank. And I'm afraid in recent years, this is probably because central banks are part of our culture, is we do a little bit of, well, it's not my fault, it's someone else's fault. And I think that's what Milton would be most outraged by in recent times. The central bank can hit any price level that it wants, any inflation level that it wants. We might not like how they do it, but the idea that is they should be blaming someone else strikes me as quite antithetical to good economic history.
And it's, for the remainder of our conversation, it's probably important just to repeat, not only is inflation a choice, but a sound dollar is also a choice, and Volcker did it. Within living memory, it has been done. We suffered inflation, and then the Fed got it back under control. All right, one more of these baby questions.
If I might, so
Yes.
they got it back under control, and then I suspect, this is a little psychobabble from an economist, then they got complacent about inflation being under control. Somehow, after the period of what we call the Great Moderation, where prices were more or less stable for a period of more than a generation, I think some in my profession thought this was easy. And in fact, that it was under control because we'd all gotten so very good at this. We'd all gotten perhaps a little complacent with this business, but economics isn't that easy. And it's really because of the most recent crises of 08 and 2020 that I suspect we took our eye off the ball.
You've used this phrase a couple.
There's a lot of people that have actually hit on this, the crisis of '08 being tied to Mossad agent of Jeffrey Epstein, which is kind of interesting in itself that a lot of people really seriously hit on that point. They're like, the economy was all right, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. You know Virgie? Do I? Probably.
Times now. Let's just define it. The Great Moderation is, I'm
Probably
asking,
rated
it
them a couple
begins
times.
by the mid-'80s when Volcker and the Fed, backed, let it be said, by Ronald Reagan, when they actually get inflation down into low single digits, and inflation stays right there, and the economy expands with only a couple of quarters of recession for the next quarter of a century until the crisis of 2008. Am I right about that, and is that what you're referring to as the Great Moderation?
That's exactly right. And we don't want to sound as though, boy, every year was perfect and central bankers didn't make any mistakes. But the mistakes were relatively small and manageable. And for viewers, I think inflation is still this very abstract concept. We want the change in prices to be such that in the economy, such that no one's talking about it. That's how we know we've done our job. And what do
We've been raided. We've been raided by Dominion After Dark.
Yo, thanks, Dom.
Thanks for raiding the stream, Dom. Make sure you smash a button, lick it and flick it.
Thanks, Dom.
want the change in prices to be such that in the economy, such that no one's talking about it. That's how we know we've done our job. And what do we know about the last 5 or 6 years? It's almost everything anyone will talk about.
Right. Last of
But if you did it hours ago, lick it this time. Just it's like lean forward and literally lick your screen. Do it. Sending 4 viewers or not? Well, I mean, let's go.
We want the change in prices to be such that in the economy, such that no one's talking about it. That's how we know we've done our job. And what do we know about the last 5 or 6 years? It's almost everything anyone will talk about.
Right. Last of my elementary questions here. Gold. President Nixon takes us off the gold standard in 1971. Until then, the dollar was always convertible into a fixed weight of precious metal, for the most part gold, and that constrained the money supply. The journalist and investor James Grant writing just last year, the opposite of the gold standard, what we have in place now, the opposite of the gold standard is really the system in place today in the United States. One might call it the PhD standard. It's the system of discretionary manipulation of interest rates by doctors of economics, close quote. So James Grant suggests, if not gold, some fixed basket of commodities. Milton Friedman said about the same time that he...
Just a bunch of fucking IOUs. Just a bunch of fucking IOUs. That's where we ended up going with that.
Yep.
Quotation I gave you where he said he long stood for abolishing
Yeah,
the Fed.
as soon as
the
he
Fed should
took,
be replaced.
as soon as Nixon took us off the gold standard, it was fucked. Yeah. I mean, as soon as the Fed came in, it was just the precursor. But yeah, once we stopped backing our dollar with the gold or silver or whatever, it was worthless.
Here. The opposite of the gold standard, what we have in place now, the opposite of the gold standards is really the system in place today in the United States. One might call it the PhD standard. It's the system of discretionary manipulation of interest rates by doctors of economics, close quote. So James Grant suggests, if not gold, some fixed basket of commodities. Milton Friedman said about the same time that of the quotation I gave you where he said he long stood for abolishing the Fed, that the Fed should be replaced with a pre-announced increase in the money supply by a fixed sum that would take place each and every year. So it was totally transparent. Markets, you could plan a decade in advance. And both of those are a way of saying, let's find some objective standards here. Yes. Let's find some way of constraining the money supply that the markets can know about in advance and not leave it all to the subjective impulses and the groupthink and the who really understands that econometric latest piece of research that takes place in the Federal Reserve System now. To which Kevin Warsh replies,
there is no status quo ante to return to. I have many of our friends on the right who believe, well, let's just bring the gold standard back. The world has moved on. Might it have been better or worse had we made different choices along the way? But you have to deal with what's right in front of you. I think that's what Orwell said. And there has to be a third choice between let's let the machine do it and let's have full discretion of a central banker's latest whims. I think you and I might have learned from Edmund Burke of conservatism. It's a resistance to whims. We central bankers, past and present, need to resist whims. There's a way to have clarity about the reaction function of central banks to incoming information. And if Milton were with us today, I hesitate to put words in the great man's mouth, but I think he would say that there had been too much scientism, scholasticism, trying to make precise that which we have still imperfect understandings of. Most of us in economics that are, I'd say, better than average, we try to focus to the left of the decimal point, not to the right of the decimal point. Now, if we were better at our craft, if we were smarter, we'd be physicists and mathematicians. And most of us that are in this business, we started in one of those fields, and we came to economics because, frankly, it was easier. And so we don't have a perfected understanding of how the economy works. If we did, we could create the machine, we could create the formula, but the economy is changing every day. It's incredibly dynamic. And so I hesitate to say we have a perfected rule.
All right. Now we'll move on to recent history, your recent history, and the Fed's recent history, what the financial crisis wrought. You were on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors during the financial crisis of 2008, which led to the worst economic contraction since the Great Depression and unemployment in this country of 10%.
Are you drawing a causal relationship there, Peter? I'm scared where the rest of this is going.
You're just plain bad luck, Kevin. The Fed responded with a number of actions, but perhaps the most dramatic was to flood the system with liquidity. Let me give you some sense of the magnitude of the Fed's action. Between the first and second quarter of 2008, the Fed's balance sheet, measure of the supply of reserves in the banking system, the balance sheet doubled in the space of a quarter from $1 trillion to $2 trillion. Now, you've written that you strongly supported that decision. So before we get to the QE 2, 3, 4, and so forth.
Just print more money, right?
Uh-huh. Always. Why wouldn't you just print more money?
Doubled from $1 trillion to $2 trillion. Printed. They printed $1 trillion in a quarter. 3 months. Yeah.
Supported that decision. So before we get to the QE 2, 3, 4, and so forth, about which you're deeply skeptical, or at least, well, you'll explain yourself in a moment. But first tell me why you supported that dramatic infusion of money into the markets in 2008.
Yeah, so first of all, we keep bringing up this word money. I should say a word about that.
Please.
Milton believed, as you suggest, that monetary policy and inflation is about...
He asked you a question and give a damn about Milton. What did Milton believe? Why did you support it, asshole?
money. That is heretical in the modern academy. That is not taught in introductory to economics at most of these elite universities. Most came from a different school, not this monetary school, but more of a Keynesian school. And in that Keynesian school, money barely comes up. In fact, if you look at the transcripts of the Federal Reserve, they tape most of the words that we utter inside the Federal Open Market Committee. You're going to have to look a long time until you see that word money. I think money, strangely enough, has something to do with monetary policy. It has been absent from the discussion. I think it's part of the reason why this great inflation came back, because, well, Milton himself, I don't believe, would have held exactly to the model he had in his mind 30 years ago. He would have said money has something to do with it. And in the run-up of the great inflation, around the time of the COVID crisis, we saw a surge of money, both money as best we measure it and velocity as best we see it.
So
and
PB equals MQ, I'm trying to remember back now to classes a long time ago. That's still, I would have thought that was basic in discussions at the Fed.
It is non-existent in most discussions among modern economists. Now, Milton used to say, this is the last ode to Milton, then we'll turn to current events.
Yes, yes.
Milton, I was a 19 or 20-year-old, and there was a small group of us around a table a little larger than this, and I asked him some question, probably trying to show off that I knew something about something of which I didn't. And he said, Kevin, the only thing we understand in economics is Econ 1. Everything else is made up. And I remember thinking, Peter, maybe the old man's losing it. Maybe he's sort of past his day. The Nobel Prize was given some period before that. I didn't know until the financial crisis of which you now speak that the old man was exactly right. No one predicted it. No one saw it, because all we really know about economics we teach in Econ 1. And at least in the Econ 1, before the schools of economic thinking took over at these elite departments, we said that money has something to do with monetary policy. And I still believe that to be true.
By the way, it occurs to me that as we sit here today, it's getting up toward 20 years ago that the financial crisis hit. So why don't you take just a moment to just explain what that felt like? You're on the phone to friends in New York. You're in Washington at the time on the board of the Fed. How bad was it? What do we need to understand about that crisis?
So I teach on occasion in this business school not far from where we're taping. And for years, I would talk about the global financial crisis, and they'd look at me, and these students would have some recollection. Now, they weren't exactly in business, but they remember how their parents would have come home, or they remembered watching it on TV. Now, when I talk of the global financial crisis, they had heard of it, and I could have easily been talking about the Great Depression.
Right.
So it was some time ago.
Right.
How it felt to me is, I was 35 years old, and I had finally found myself to this august position because of President Bush and Ben Bernanke, and I was in this beautiful office, and for about 6 or 8 months, life was grand. Someone would come in and put wood in the fire. Someone else would, restock this little pitcher of ice water, and I thought things were good. Little did I know that was the calm before the storm. I would say in retrospect, it was scarier than it felt at the time, because we were in some ways in the bunker together. While I don't know if Ben Bernanke would at all be comfortable with what I said at the IMF G30 meeting a few weeks ago, he was a heck of a strong, good battle commander. We were all in the...
I didn't see the IMF G30 thing. I didn't know that he actually had so. Oh, that was a few weeks ago from 10 months ago. So,
I mean, that's a weird brag that he just did about sitting in Bernanke's office and someone would bring in wood to stoke the fire and refill the pitchers, and why are you even mentioning that?
Right. Welcome back, Lonesome Strummer.
bunker together, and he was very open to a small group of people who could get around a table like this and fight about what's happening and why. He was quite open to heretical ideas. I wonder whether there's such permitted heresy in the profession or at the central bank these days. But in the darkest days of that crisis, which maybe we get a gentleman's B for how we handled it, we could have done more sooner. We made plenty of mistakes. We had some successes too. The real economy was deteriorating faster than we had any historical reference of. Financial markets were down 60, 70% in equity prices, and maybe most alarming, the treasury market auctions. The auction for the most important security in the world, which is synonymous with the dollar. People weren't showing up in the auctions, at least at the beginning. Bid-ask spreads were wide, and we were worried that the American economic system was at the very cliff.
So my recollection, flooding the system with liquidity, pushing money out into the system, was an emergency measure intended to keep the exchanges, to keep the markets functioning.
Yes.
On the theory that keeping the markets at work, keeping the markets open and functioning, giving people enough currency to be able to buy and sell, was the best and most immediate thing that anybody could do. The markets themselves would gradually work this through, I suppose. Is that the justification?
So I'd say it goes back to first principles.
Right.
This third experiment of central bank, the one you referenced, the one that we're still living in, created in 1913, was created in 1913 in response to a panic that had preceded it less than a decade before. Central banks were first created, or this generation of central banks, to respond to just this sort of situation. A panic in the old days, what we now call a deep recession, a financial crisis, is when markets aren't working, when there are spreads between what buyers are willing to pay and sellers are willing to sell. And the job of the central bank is to show up with all sorts of money, there's that dirty word again, and get those markets to function. Not to set prices, but to make sure that buyers and sellers could clear, and the central bank was there to provide liquidity when no one else would. We were the backstop and are the backstop to the banking system, not just in the US, but in the rest of the world, because if we blew it, it would have been even worse for the rest of the world. So that's what we did in crises. And some of your and my friends on the right, including at institutions we care deeply about, their views then were, you should let the system burn down. A phoenix will rise from the ashes. You really have no business in doing this. That's not my view. My view is the central bank was created to respond to panics. We had one. We recognized
Bacon bot? That's just neural.
it belatedly, but then we showed overwhelming force. And the word you used, I think, is the right word. It was an emergency.
Right.
So you're prepared to cross more lines than you would in benign times. You're prepared to, in some sense, as Paul Volcker famously said then, go to the very edge of your authority. But there was an implicit promise we made to each other around the table, that we made to the Treasury Department, the Congress, and I would broadly say to the rest of the US government. When the crisis ends, we'll get out of this. We will go back to being a rather boring central bank. That's on page B12 of the newspaper. 6 little paragraphs. The Fed met today and they raised or cut interest rates a quarter of a point. But from that moment until this moment, the central bank became front page news, and I will argue played a bigger role than our founders would have been comfortable with, and the founders of a central bank should be comfortable with.
All right, let's go through then from 2008 to the present. And we have, I'm sure I'll get this wrong, so correct me. Let me go through it quickly. QE1. QE stands for quantitative easing, which is a fancy way of saying pushing money into the system. QE1 takes place in 2008. We've just discussed that. The Fed's balance sheet goes from just under $1 trillion to just over $2 trillion. Kevin's in favor of that one. QE2 takes place in 2010. The Fed's balance sheet rises to just under $3 trillion. QE3 takes place in 2012. The Fed takes its balance sheet up to $4 trillion.
Ashton says stop the brain glue? What brain glue? What are you talking about? Just listening to interesting things, because when it comes down to it, to understand the stuff that's occurring and why it's occurring, how much more it's going to occur, and why they keep on increasing the supposed dollar for no reason.
Right, and also the people that are involved in this, like Kevin Walsh, for example, who just became federal. Didn't he just become federal chair?
Kevin Walsh, yeah, just became that chair. That's why we're watching this, is because he's that chair.
Right. Yeah. So he's the guy making the decisions now, and I'm totally into getting a little backstory on him for sure.
Right, exactly.
$3 trillion. QE3 takes place in 2012. The Fed takes its balance sheet up to $4 trillion. QE4 takes place in 2020 during the COVID lockdown, which will require a moment or two of discussion because that was an emergency. Toward the end of
And then $7 trillion. $7 trillion in Q4 of 2020. Well, that was an emergency.
Right. Yeah.
So then the 2 years later, right? 2 years later, as the emergency is ready to wrap up, what happens?
Yeah.
We just realize, we can just spend a whole bunch of money because people are stupid.
Yep. That's exactly what happened.
What up,
we need
Rooster?
more.
What's up, Rooster? 44 likes. Appreciate that.
COVID by 2022,
Thanks, Obama.
its balance sheet is up to $9 trillion.
$9 trillion.
Since then, the Fed has brought it back down to $7 trillion. But as you have noted,
Yeah. So in 20 years, not even 14 years, we've gone 9 times what we were at.
Right.
Yeah. Because he said earlier in 2007, the liquidity was at 1 trillion. Then they doubled to 2. Yeah.
since then, the Fed has brought it back down to $7 trillion. But as you have noted, the Fed's balance sheet today is almost an order of magnitude larger than it was when you joined the Fed within living memory in 2006. Okay, we've discussed QE1, QE2, QE3, the pre-COVID expansions of the money supply.
You know, you keep printing $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there, it's going to catch up to you, Peter. I mean, back in your day in Washington and in my day, various parts of the economic institutions would spend millions on this project or billions on that. We are a big and strong economy. We can tolerate these sorts of things, even if these projects aren't perfect. But when the Federal Reserve prints trillions, especially in benign times, it changes everything. And it almost is a signal to the rest of Congress, we're doing it and so can you. So let's just go back to the essence of quantitative easing for a moment. QE1, which by the way, at the time we tried to market it, this worked for about a week, as credit easing. That was our preferred nomenclature. QE sort of took off without us. And what did we say then? We debated internally whether to do this. And the story goes something like this, Peter. Secretary Paulson, he's issuing bonds on Monday and Tuesday. What do you say we buy them on Thursday and Friday?
I mean, why wouldn't you? Look at this guy's smile on his face. He knows exactly where he's going with that. Not you. It's all fun, bro. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm just trying. I was sort of curious on the brain glue. What was that comment for? Because it kind of helped for like spinning things into a nice little segue or whatever. You love that bot, don't you?
Oh yeah, I got a whole list of sarcastic sayings up here that I'm asking it, or sarcastic questions.
And I don't believe in betraying the confidences of those that were sitting around tables, but I recall one person saying, well, that sounds like a Ponzi scheme. What else do you have to save us from the global financial crisis? Explanations were given. Small versions of this were done by the Bank of Japan about a decade prior, but nothing quite like this. And we weren't quite sure how it would work, but it turns out it worked, and it was radical at the time. Now, if you turn to economic textbooks, even introductory economics, they talk about this as like standard operating procedure. It seemed like a roll of the dice then, but we were in roll of the dice time, so we took it. But that was QE1. I supported it, and I supported it with many colleagues under the view of, we're going to put this very dangerous, risky stuff back behind the covered glass until there's another crisis. We really never did that. So the story you were going to tell about the subsequent QEs during a period that I would say was reasonably strong growth, reasonably stable financial markets, reasonable periods of stable prices. We started doing it for all seasons and all reasons. And in so doing, we raised the bar for when another crisis hits, because whatever you were doing couldn't possibly be enough. I should only note one other thing. You're cleansing my biography, and I should be grateful. I resigned.
You did?
When QE2 was launched.
In 2010.
And, all right, I left in early 2011. My colleagues, including Chairman Bernanke, who I mentioned, for whom I had great respect as a warfighter, he and my colleagues at the Fed decided that we should keep on doing it.
On what grounds?
Well,
if you could make the best argument for their case that you could, what would the argument be?
So we don't see any costs. We have found a free lunch. Look around, asset prices are higher. Markets are filled with more liquidity. The economy is good.
Acid prices are higher?
That's what I heard. I was like, acid prices are up? Well, that sucks.
What? Well, what the fuck? Now it costs even more to get high? Wow. You can't even catch a break anyway.
That you could, what would the argument be?
So
Tell me,
we don't see any
inflation's
costs.
hit the drug
We
market
found-
now? That's bullshit, man.
I know, right? Next, you're going to tell me pork bellies and mushrooms are being combined together on the stock market? That sounds kind of yummy.
I mean, send it. We have found a free lunch. Have we found a free lunch? They can. They just print money. It's okay. It's okay. It's like everybody will be just fine because we have money. We can afford whatever we want. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a lot of people in the future.
Yep. That's why this central bank system is going to come into place, because of the Federal Reserve. There's no just snap of the finger. Trump cannot sign an executive order. I mean, he can, but that doesn't mean it's going to survive. It's not just a snap of the fingers. It requires Congress, like Frogbot had said, it's a long path to getting rid of the Federal Reserve. And I think we're too close to the end for anything to be done about that. I think it's going to bust at one point. The AI bubble is going to bust. And nobody's going to see it coming because everyone thought everything was cool until it wasn't. Because the way they're building data centers, it's not sustainable. Some of those companies are going to fail. Once they start failing, you're going to see a domino effect. You see it in every single bubble bust. The dot-com, the real estate market in 2008, it just goes on and on. That's what happened back in 1929. There was another bust, oil business. Everyone and their brother wanted to start an oil company. Yeah. And then that went up, and, well, market shit.
What about my mom?
What?
I just see a question from Astrid. What
Yeah,
about
yeah,
my
no, I
mom?
see that. Yeah, I'm. That's kind of a weird thing.
Bot alert.
Yeah, I got it.
Bot alert. Beep, boop.
Fucking
Beep, beep, boop.
Bones and Stormer left a comment. Nice.
Bye. Bye-bye. Is that what it takes to get 2 more likes on your video?
What's that?
Or to get 2 more views on your videos, just to go to random fucking channels and spam your link?
Spam your link everywhere.
Yeah.
Nobody's watching me.
Talk
Fucking
about
do the
gay.
thing, man. Right? Do the thing. Sit there, do the job. Watch something. Pay attention to something. Critique something. Whatever it is that you're gonna do something. Quit being retarded.
Yeah, don't be a retard.
Don't be a retard. Don't be like Farah other Reuter. I don't even know what the fucking name. Huh? Can we bury that comment?
Sure. There.
Yeah. I need to hear more. Just in case. There it goes.
Down to free lunch. Look around, asset prices are higher. Markets are filled with more liquidity. The economy is good. And gosh, if we take it away, we don't know what would happen. And in some sense, they broke, in my view, the bargain that was struck. Did any of us know what would happen under various scenarios? No. Because again, in economics, unlike in physics, there are no control groups, at least no very good ones. And I should say the other thing that's different between economics and physics and math is the atoms that we're tracking in economics, they change their minds. Right. So we don't know how individuals are going to react to a whole range of things, but the argument was the costs are small, the benefits are large, let's keep doing more of the same.
All right. QE4 takes place during COVID. Economist Paul, I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce this name, Paul Shard, in 2021, quote, with government suppressing economic activity to quell the pandemic, fiscal policy needs, he's writing during the pandemic, needs to play a significant social insurance role by providing income support to households and small businesses, and the more that monetary policymakers show their determination to achieve their inflation target by implementing aggressive QE policies, flooding the system with still more liquidity, the more credibility they will have when it comes to fighting inflation, close quote. Kevin?
Much to unpack in that quote.
Unpack away.
So when you're in a crisis, like the 2008 crisis and like the pandemic crisis, you know, I used to be known for saying, when you've seen one financial crisis, you've seen one financial crisis. So none of them are terribly similar. But again, if you had imported my mind into the 2020 pandemic, I was here in the cheap seats at Stanford and in New York, I would have said, well, this is a time where we have to be radical. But the problem is between...
Another emergency.
Another emergency.
Right.
But we didn't have an emergency for most of the decade between 2010 and 2020. This was the time for the central bank to retreat. Instead, the central bank stayed on the front pages. And I should also note, during that period of a relatively benign period of relative peace and prosperity, Congress said, well, if the central bank are buying all the bonds, then we can spend trillions. Hence, the fiscal authorities, Congress and the president, decided there are very few costs to all of this spending because the Federal Reserve is subsidizing it, because we were the most important purchaser of these bonds. Then when you find your way into crisis, yes, I have sympathy for my colleagues in crises to do crisis-like things, but if you treat every day for more than a decade like it's a crisis, then when the actual crisis hits, you have to cross more lines. You have to get more involved in the private sector. And in so doing, to go back to where you began, you have an economic institution that isn't the first among equals, it's the first and most important institution in the world. And you see administrations, Republican and Democrat.
Unelected bankers.
And you see members of Congress. And importantly, you see businesses. They now hire lobbyists to go to the central bank seeking relief. This is ahistorical. This is, in my view, dangerous. It takes the responsibility and accountability of fiscal policy and brings it to the central bank. And while my colleagues are well-intentioned folks, and they might even make some good judgments, many of these things aren't their job.
Kevin, let me respond on behalf of the Federal Reserve. Yes, everything you said. But here's where we are today. Inflation is now below 2.5%, and the economy is growing, in spite of it all. And so instead of chiding the Federal Reserve, you should be saying, ladies and gentlemen, well done.
Mission accomplished is a very dangerous thing for policymakers in Washington, and that was your attempt at mission accomplished. So let me say this. After most crises, Peter, after the 9/11 crisis, after the global financial crisis, there were a series of after-action reports, congressional scrutiny, blue ribbon commissions. How did that happen? Well, after the Great Inflation, I'm still waiting for this. Instead, we've cleaned up matters somewhat, but the institution is still, in my view, in over its skis quite a bit, and inflation is still above target. The Fed has said that they are doing a bit of an after-action report. They're looking at their objectives. They're going to come out with this report this coming August. I wonder whether their report will be up to the task of this great error. The prices of goods and services over the last 5 or 6 years are up more than 30%. Since the day before COVID, the federal government spending is up 63%. And 5 years ago, I don't remember thinking this is an august, efficient, well-run government. So there are consequences that we shouldn't just sweep under the rug. So I appreciate the snapshot. Things are much better, but there have been costs to this error, and the costs are being felt by those that are the least well off among us.
You've already mentioned some of this, but I'd like to go to the damage the Fed has done.
The least well off among us, the poor. The poor get to feel all those things. If you're poor, you get to even be more poor.
Done explicitly. The Wall Street Journal, this was a remarkable thing on which I congratulate you. I've never seen it before, that the Wall Street Journal reprinted over here under your name, well, you did it, excerpted and rewrote your remarks for a column for the Wall Street Journal, and then printed over here the lead op-ed in the day's paper commenting on your speech. A Nobel Prize is as nothing by comparison with appearing on both sides of the Wall Street Journal editorial page. So here's what the Journal said. Federal debt as a proportion of GDP in 2006, when you joined the Fed, was about 34%. Federal debt as a proportion of GDP today is headed toward about 124%. And the Journal quotes your speech, irresponsible spending surged, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic. I struggle to absolve the Fed of the nation's profligacy. Fed leaders encouraged government spending when times were tough, but didn't call for fiscal discipline at the time of sustained growth and full employment, close quote. And now I'm going to turn on you, Kevin, because up until now, I've been offering one little defense after another of the Fed's policy. Now I'm going to turn on you and say, the growth in federal indebtedness, as Neil Ferguson pointed out in a recent very arresting column, there is just no history of any government that finds itself paying more on debt service than it does on defense and remaining a great nation. Far, my friend, from sounding the alarm, you've been much too tepid in attacking the Fed. This is an outrage.
So now you have me defending the Federal
Yes,
Reserve. We've reversed roles.
I'd like to see how you handle this one.
So I believe the Federal Reserve plays this critically important role. I believe the Federal Reserve is up to reform. Heal thyself is an important thing for all institutions. It is not too late, but they need to ask and answer big, hard strategic questions instead of just sort of pushing these things under the rug. Congress deserves its own criticism for reckless, irresponsible spending, made more, I would say, made acceptable because the Federal Reserve were buying those bonds in large part and signaling to the world when the Fed buys the bonds, what are we telling the world's investors? The water's warm, come on in, you should do it too. But plenty of blame should be given to presidents and to Congress for pushing big spending in periods of peace and prosperity. Okay, but it's incredibly dangerous. I'll make one final point. Yep. Irresponsibility runs in both directions. The connection between fiscal spending, that is what Congress does, and monetary printing, that's what the central bank does. When one of them is irresponsible, the other one tends to be irresponsible too. We tend not to see the harms that are done immediately. There are, as Milton famously said, long variable lags, but there's no free lunches here, and I'll make one broader point. When the rest of the world, Peter, sees the most important economic institution in the world treating normal times like they're an emergency, they do the same. No one gives us a run for our irresponsibility. The rest of the world believed about the U.S. for a long time. Well, we don't really like how they show up at these meetings of the G7 or G10 or G20 and sort of lecture us. But before the 2008 crisis, you know what they thought? Well, those Americans, they might be a bit abrasive, but they sure know how to run a banking system until we didn't. And then going into the COVID crisis, what did they think? Well, those Americans, they're different than we are, but they do seem to believe in federalism and liberty and human agency until we didn't. And then, well, that central bank, maybe we're being too tough on them, but they prevailed on and preside over a period of stable prices for 40 years. That's pretty good, until we didn't. When these institutions keep losing on important things, the rest of the world is watching. And the rest of the world is watching the central bank as we sit here today. And if the central bank can put its own house in order, hide itself from the front pages, encourage thereby the Congress to be more responsible on spending, well, then this can be the shining city on the hill again, can it?
Okay, so Herbert Stein used to say that if something can't go, the late Herbert Stein economist, and I think he was chairman of Nixon's Council of Economic Advisors, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. I don't think he was ever on the Fed, though, was he?
Not to my knowledge.
All right. So, the late economist Herb Stein used to say, if something can't go on forever, it won't. Here's the question. We've been running essentially a Ponzi scheme. The Treasury puts bonds up for sale. The Fed buys them. This is as close to actually running a printing machine and printing money as you could possibly get. And yet the world still buys T-bills. In other words, why haven't world markets disciplined the United States of America?
So
I think it's a good question, really. Why hasn't anybody else really seriously gone and, reprimanded the United States for their idiotic spending? Because we got the bigger sword in the fight. What? Supposedly? Nothing.
No, nothing.
want to be clear.
Because it looks as though Ben Bernanke was right. It looks as though there is no price.
So that was Peter Robinson, our host, saying that this is a Ponzi scheme. That is not his. That is not his guest. His guest was referring to a debate we had in a private setting about how would this appear.
Fair.
I actually do believe the U.S. is. I'd rather have our cards than anyone else's in the world.
Right.
I believe we are on the front end of a productivity boom. I believe that economic growth in the U.S. is the most important thing and could do a better job at defeasing these liabilities than anything else. Just to give one simple statistic. The Congressional Budget Office, in their latest report, full disclosure, I'm on a panel of economic advisors to that office. They pay no heed to what I say necessarily. They say that growth over the next 10 years will be 1.7 or 1.8% per year in the U.S. I think
over the next what?
10 years.
They have no idea. Excuse me. I'm not on your panel, but they don't know what growth is going to be over the next 10 years.
We don't know what it'll be in the next 10 minutes.
Correct.
So I agree. But I'm willing to take the over. No matter what our government does, it turns out that, while not a birthright of the American citizenry, we're an incredibly productive society. Our government might be trying to fix prices because of QE over the last 15 years or so, but the American people will show a dynamism and adaptability and an agency that's impressive. If we could grow 1 percentage point more per year than the Congressional Budget Office forecast, which is like most, that would yield another $4.5 trillion of revenue into the into the federal government's coffers.
Right.
Well, that's a great way to defease these liabilities. So it isn't too late. But to your question about if it can't go on forever, it won't.
Where are the alarm signals in world markets?
So I would say
or in our own market.
We don't want to get to that tipping point where we see flashing yellow lights and flashing red lights. Again, because this economy is even now, I'd say, the best of the lot with the most promising moments. We can see things that are worrisome out there, but I wouldn't want to say that this isn't.
Yeah, but Too Late was sitting there doing just that. He was making it freaking go off of kilter. Why do you think he's freaking being called out and told to freaking retire? Leave. Go away. You didn't want to go away.
Eminently fixable, but the longer we kick the can down the road, the closer we get to the tipping point, and the best way to avoid the tipping point isn't to get so close that we see it tip.
All right. So, from a document published in March by the House Budget Committee, quote, in an attempt to eradicate inflationary pressures caused by Biden's deficit spending spree, the Federal Reserve hiked interest rates 11 times between March 2022 and July 2023. Consequently, the average effective interest rate paid on the national debt doubled from 1.7% to 3.4%, and net interest costs rose from $352 billion to $881 billion. It's that $881 billion, which now means that we're paying more on debt service than we spend on the Pentagon, which is about $800 billion and change. So, Kevin,
we spend more in debt to pay off certain debts that we're not really paying off than we do to defend our own selves.
Yeah. We pay more in interest payments than,
Fucking ridiculous.
Yep. Interest on money that we should have never borrowed in the first place.
Or printed in the first place.
Well, yeah, that's right.
It's ridiculous. So,
yeah. To an institution we don't control.
Right?
Yeah.
On the Pentagon, which is about $800 billion and change. So, Kevin, the Fed still has a balance sheet of $7 trillion. How does it shrink that balance sheet? How does it claw money back in without raising it? In other words, we have to maneuver between Scylla and Charybdis here. This is a terrible.
This is a terrible pickle. Yeah. How do we get ourselves out of this debt? I mean, it pretty much looks like you don't.
Right. That's why they keep talking about this digital currency.
Sell drugs.
That would be the only way you could really do it. You got to reset everything.
Right. reset everything with selling drugs. Selling drugs is, I mean, it's the only thing that's ever really seriously been a lucrative job. We all
Work for
know
the
better.
cartels.
Hey, we only take out the cartel boats because they're the opposition. They're trying to get in on our business, you know.
Maybe if
I'm lying.
maybe the government should buy a lottery ticket.
Ooh,
Oh,
a Powerball, but only wait until it gets up to like $1 billion, because that'll matter.
and then buy a whole like 1 billion tickets, right? Makes sense.
Right.
Well, no, because the machines came from Venezuela, so the tickets were actually.
No, that's the wrong machine. It's the wrong lottery machine.
Love you, Scotsman. Enjoy your night.
Oh, yeah, I gotta get
members,
out of
current
here.
members of the Fed may say, Kevin, yes.
Enjoy it.
No, I want to hear what this guy says, though. Go ahead.
Okay, let's finish him out. All right, it's almost there.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't you understand? We're doing the best we can. In other words, what's your agenda for reform that won't make matters worse?
Yes, well, this might upset part of your audience, Peter. So this is a trigger warning. This is what people like you and I do on campus. I believe this administration inherited a mess, a fiscal and monetary mess, and it is incumbent on the administration to get out of it. No one said it would be easy. We didn't get into this mess overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. To make the numbers you said somewhat easier, I think, to understand, we were paying about $1 billion in interest expense every day the day before COVID. We're now paying more than $3 billion per day in interest expense. None of that's going to strengthen the military or help the to understand, we were paying about $1 billion in interest expense every day the day before COVID. We're now paying more than $3 billion per day in interest expense. None of
Holy shit.
Who are we paying interest to?
The Fed. The Federal Reserve. Those interest payments go directly to them. They print the money for us and then tax us for it.
A day.
Day. $3 billion a day. It was $1 billion before COVID. After COVID, $3 billion, or $3 billion 10 months ago. So I don't know, 3.2 billion today. Later, Scotsman.
Aye.
that's going to strengthen the military or help the least well-off among us, that is being squandered away. So what do I suggest? As you pointed out, and as you and I have discussed, but I'm not sure the economics profession believes this, there are two monetary policy instruments. One is setting of interest rates,
right,
and the other is this money we keep talking about. We call it QE, we call it the central bank's balance sheet. If we would run the printing press a little quieter, we could then have lower interest rates.
Right, stop spending, printing money.
Right.
If we can run it quieter, I mean...
Does that mean keep printing money and just don't tell anyone about it?
That's where I was going to go. What does this really mean? You're just going to continue to do it? It's just like turn the engine down a little bit so as it's going around the wheel going printing money, it kind of just...
You know, it's funny that earlier he said that in the roundtable discussions at the federal chair on the board, they don't even use the word money, but that's what this is all about, is printing.
Right.
I mean, yeah. Wow.
Because what we're doing right now is we have all this money that's being flooded into the system, which causes inflation to be above target. That's the $7 trillion balance sheet you're talking about, an order of magnitude larger than when I joined the Fed. And at the same time, you have another monetary policy instrument, and that's interest rates. They don't work perfectly together. They're not perfect substitutes for each, but they're both monetary policy. And too many that are in the central banking business say, no, that balance sheet has nothing to do with monetary policy. Well, if it did when you were growing it, it should have something to do with the conduct of monetary policy when it's going the other direction. I think we have to be honest about these two instruments. And because I believe that growing the real economy is the more important piece for revenue, for fairness, for efficiency and growth, because you have higher inflation caused by the bigger balance sheet, we want to shrink that. We can't do it overnight. We want the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve to come to some accord, much like the Treasury and the Federal Reserve came to in 1951. Who's responsible for what? Who's going to be managing interest rates? The Federal Reserve Reserve, who's going to be handling fiscal accounts? The Treasury Department. We have blurred these lines about who's responsible. And when a president comes to power, his Treasury Secretary should be responsible for as the fiscal authority, instead of blurring that over to the Federal Reserve, which only brings politics to the Federal Reserve, and I would say interrupts their normal, ordinary course. In my judgment, we should be shrinking the central bank balance sheet, taking the Fed out of these markets unless and until there's a crisis. And in so doing, you'd have less inflation that way. You and I might call that a practical monetarism. I think that's what our intellectual heirs might be thinking about, intellectual teachers might be thinking about. And in so doing, you might actually be able to pull off lower interest rates, which matter more to the real economy than the balance sheet.
All right. Kevin, let me ask you in closing here about two visions of the country. And let me set this up with again, a couple of quotations. Here's you, Kevin Warsh. For about 40 years, this is beginning with the Great Moderation, so beginning in the mid-'80s. For about 40 years, Americans scarcely thought about changes in the price level. Things were working the way they should. We could take it for granted because intelligent, hardworking people permitted the rest of the country to get on with its business, correct? All right. Here is former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan testifying on the financial crisis of 2008 before Congressman Henry Waxman. Greenspan: I made a mistake in presuming that the self-interests of organizations, specifically banks, were such that they were best capable of protecting their own shareholders and equity. Coming from Alan Greenspan, who began his career as an Ayn Rand fan and was as deep a believer in free markets as you could ever encounter anywhere in America in the 20th or 21st centuries, that's a statement. Waxman says, in other words, you found that your free market ideology was not working. Greenspan: that's precisely the reason I was shocked, because I have been going on for 40 years with very considerable evidence that it was working. Okay, so here's one vision. Beginning with Fed Chairman Paul Volcker and President Reagan back in the 1980s, we achieved low inflation, sound dollar. Overall federal spending is low enough to permit the economy to grow. Indeed, it grows faster than than federal spending. But as George W. Bush comes into office, and before new wars take place, as he comes into office, we're actually projected to run, for a couple of years we're projected to run a surplus. But it's over. The financial crisis changed the world. The COVID lockdown, we have over a decade now of fiscal irresponsibility and market distorting easy money. And now you have market professionals such as James Grant and Ray Dalio casting doubt on the whole monetary system, and young entrepreneurs buying Bitcoin because they no longer trust the dollar. Kevin, something basic is over and it's irreparable. What do you make of that vision?
That's outrageous.
Really?
I am not a quitter. The country is not a quitter. The country is on the verge of a productivity boom, in my view, that makes that productivity boom that you knew when you were sitting in the Oval Office helping as a scribe to the president, that's going to make the 1980s look like we can do it all over again.
AI more than AI. So give me your vision. Give me your vision of what can happen if we don't continue screwing it up.
Our government has done its level best now for more than 15 years trying to screw around and do harm to this economy, and we have failed miserably. In spite of our best efforts to undermine the United States and its role in the world, the 21st century can be America's century. We have real rivals, a G2 rivalry, much like you once knew with the Soviets on the other side of the world. We have to take it very seriously. But boy, I'd much rather have our cards than theirs. The broad conduct of public policy doesn't have to be perfect. You and I could envision with colleagues around here what would make for perfect trade policy or regulatory policy or tax policy. But of course, perfection's not the necessary ingredient. We just need to make policy a little better than it is, move it directionally back towards something that makes good sense in monetary and fiscal policy, and the U.S. economy will boom. Now, there's a tendency among some of our peers to say, well, we should just do what Reagan did. But those days are behind us. Hayek, I think, famously said the job of people like you and me is to take the ideas from the past and to restate them and rethink them in the minds of a new generation. And so it's not going back to Reaganism. It's a new set of economic policies in a new world that can drive the American spirit, that can drive individual liberty and freedom. And importantly, they need institutions like the Federal Reserve to be restored to what they once were, which is important institutions that are on the sidelines most of the time and can come in exigent circumstances. And in so doing, we'll have more fiscal responsibility. We'll have higher economic growth. And this new generation of technologies, I believe, started here, and the U.S. will be a huge beneficiary. It's not preordained. It's not a birthright. But I believe it's not only possible, but likely.
Two last questions. Summary questions. The Fed does not need to be ripped up. It doesn't need to be smashed and rebuilt. It just needs to correct its present course. A few degrees. The aircraft carrier takes a while to adjust, but a few degrees will...
No.
No.
You gotta destroy it. Remove it. Just take it out completely. There's no needed for removing it just a few degrees of any sort. Nah. No. Tear it out.
Right.
50...
And an aircraft carrier actually can turn pretty quick on a pretty small footprint.
Yeah. They really can.
Ability, yeah. They don't like to, but they can.
50 likes. Appreciate that.
do the trick. Have I got that right?
Right, I think you do. The Fed doesn't need a revolution. It's had a revolution in the last decade. What it needs is some degree of restoration. Now, I know you're not a golfer, but I learned this from a famous golf course architect named Gil Hanse. When he looks at these golf courses and he tries to think about how do I make them great again, he says that he is inspired by their past, but not bound by it. Faithful to what the architects of that golf course, in this case the central bank, had in mind, faithful to it, but don't have to literally recreate it. Again, this is just like we can't go back to Reagan regulatory policies or Reagan fiscal or tax policies. We can't go back to Reagan monetary policies. But we can look back to an institution and try to restore its best elements and keep in mind how the world is changing. You made reference to Bitcoin, and I thought I heard a little bit of condescension that people are buying Bitcoin in these things.
But doesn't it, Charlie Munger, this is 2 or 3 years before he died, Charlie Munger attacked Bitcoin. He called it evil, in part because it would begin to undermine the Fed's ability to manage the economy.
Or it could provide market discipline. Or it could tell the world that things need to be fixed.
Bitcoin does not make you nervous.
Bitcoin does not make me nervous. I can harken back to a dinner I had here in 2011 with someone who is another guest on your show. I won't say his name. I just did Mark Andreessen, who showed me the white paper. That was the original white paper. I wish I had understood as clearly as he did how transformative Bitcoin and this new technology would be. Bitcoin doesn't trouble me. I think of it as an important asset that can help inform policymakers when they're doing things right and wrong. It is not a substitute to the dollar. I think it can often be a very good policeman for policy. And if I were to speak more broadly to what did Charlie Munger and others perhaps have in mind, there is a proliferation of securities that go under all sorts of names. Many, if not most of them, are not worth what they might be being traded for. So what did Charlie say, and maybe his pal Warren say? There's the innovators, the imitators, and the incompetents. They're real innovators that are happening in and around that new technology. And what I would try to impart towards businesses and bankers is that the underlying technology that Mark showed me in that white paper, or tried to show me in that white paper, it's just software. It's just the newest, coolest software that will provide us an ability to do things that we could never have done before. Can the software be used for good and evil? Yes, both, like all software. Right. So I don't cast aspersions like that. If there's a final point, it's these technologies are being built here. I don't just mean on Stanford campus. I believe in the United States. And the world's most talented engineers from China.
Morning, Twisted. A rooster says that guy talks too fast. It's because he's sped up, bro.
And Europe and everywhere, they come to the United States, even now, to try to build this stuff. And my view is by building it here, that gives us an opportunity to be more productive and create something very special over the next decade.
Last question, Kevin. Last question. You, back in Manhattan, you work with one of the great investors of the last half century, Stanley Druckenmiller, and you're known as a macro house. You're looking at large global trends. So you see, and I know you see in detail because I know that you've been to China over and over again to investigate matters on the ground in China. There we have China, which since roughly the very late 70s has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, built a modern economy. We now see growth in India, more openness to markets in India. It's lagging China, but it's coming on. We even see, I say even because for decade after decade, these were viewed as trouble spots, but in sub-Saharan Africa, there are signs of real economic growth in Nigeria and Kenya, among other places. Looking at all of that, aware of all of that, Kevin Warsh is still long the United States of America.
Absolutely. I'll say a couple things if I can.
Of course you
that. The U.S. is the innovator of almost all of these technologies. Now, might they be used in other places? Absolutely. The most talented people in the world still want to come here. The most talented people that are in the United States want to build here. Economic policy, I believe, is trending in a better direction over the last half year than it has been. Economic policy isn't perfect and it never will be, but the American people are ready to be liberated from the shackles they've been under. For all the policies that have been discussed around this table and others, we haven't mentioned the regulatory tax that has really done great harm to the U.S. economic growth over the course of the last decade. That tax is coming off. I believe in part, we've talked about this productivity revolution. We've talked in some sense about technology, but I think that humans are underrated, American humans in particular. And their ability to adapt to new technologies and thrive, I think is very real. This might sound Pollyannish to some of your listeners, but what we used to call the micro foundations of macroeconomics, which I will broadly translate in another trigger word, the culture of what's happening in the society, the willingness to take risks, fail and take risks again, they are still happening in the United States more than anywhere else. They're not happening in France and Germany at this rate. They're not happening in China at this rate because of their own governance issues. And it's an incredibly exciting time. As we take that regulatory tax away, as we restore some economic policies that have worked better before, as we're reforming institutions right now, I'm willing to take the upside of economic growth here, and I'm willing to bet that the central bank fixes matters that are broken, achieves price stability yet again, and the rest of the world might not love us, but once again, they're going to look at the U.S. and say, in spite of some of the things we don't like, their economy is growing faster, and that's where we want to send our capital.
Kevin Warsh, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Honored to be back on the show.
For Uncommon Knowledge, the Hoover Institution, and Fox Nation, I'm Peter Robinson.
So he's not opposed to a digital currency.
He's not. He's not opposed to it in any rate.
That's what I got out of most of that. I mean, there were some other things too, but
Right.
yeah.
When it comes to the, because Trump's really into certain people when he gets into certain things. He's really into the cryptocurrencies himself. Wants to actually go with the digital backed whatever. Change things, make things different. I don't know if that really helps us in any rate. For the Federal Reserve to actually be okay with changing currencies, I don't like it. Not that I like what we're already doing. So I mean, you go and you make it digital. They can shut it off on us before saying something stupid. Just for literally sitting here talking about it. That's concerning.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm going to get out of here.
Get
Yes.
it?
Later, all.
See ya. Same for me. I'm going to be out too.
Get it?
I'm starting to nod off, so I'm going to head down to chat. I'll catch y'all later.
Get it? Get it? We'll see how well we do here within the next bit. Listening to this to these next couple pieces. We'll see. We'll see. If I start noticing, then we'll legit just go.
I was gonna say, I like his music choice.
Yeah,
Seems
exactly.
appropriate. Okay, first of all, it's great to be back on stage with you, Jamie, a year later. And I do feel like the bar's been set high after our conversation last year. So let's start right there, because last year on this stage, you talked about tectonic plate shifting, both in terms of geopolitics and the global economy. How do you see it now?
So first of all, welcome everybody. Thrilled to be here. Those tectonic plates, they're still shifting, they're still moving, they're still the most important thing that's taking place in the world. They dwarf the short-term economy, and that's the war in Ukraine, and I wish we were more supportive of Ukraine. That's the terrorism in the Middle East. It's now the Iranian war, which I hope settles properly for us. And then you have things like the huge global deficits, the remilitarization of the world, the restructuring of trade, and those are tectonic plates that may very well affect the future of the free world. And my eyes on that. That's not a forecast about the short-term economy. I just think it's the most important thing that we all have to roll up our sleeves and worry about, which is why we started the Security Resiliency Initiative, the American Dream Initiative, to do our part in trying to make sure those things turn out the right way.
Yeah, and we seem to be potentially poised to be on the
Welcome to the pond. Crystal loves David 17.
cusp of a plan here, a broader ceasefire, maybe potentially even peace plan with Iran. But how has that conflict changed the trajectory?
Not really, because I think last year we spoke about Ukraine, and we said, it's the evil axis. It's Ukraine, Iran, North Korea. Iran, the other thing, I hear a lot of people, they talk about Iran, they usually mention, or at least some people, it wasn't an imminent threat, it wasn't an imminent threat. No, a threat is when I'm threatening you. They've been killing people, terrorizing people for 47 years. And if you actually think about it, and they had proxy wars, they've been doing it not in the Middle East, they've been doing it in the United States. They killed a lot of Americans. They killed a lot of Americans on October 7th in Israel. They killed a lot of people in Africa. And my thought is, why did we put up with it? Why do we even put up with these proxy things? Remember, Ronald Reagan, when Gaddafi was doing a bunch of stuff, he didn't like pretend to hurt him. He tried to kill him, and Gaddafi backed off. So next time we should go for the head of the snake, and this is obviously hindsight. I hate crying over spilled milk. Maybe we should have done it like 25 years ago. Get all the allied nations, get 500,000 troops around Iran, and told them this is over. We're not putting up with this stuff anymore, because that would have been a better outcome. Because I do agree, Iran having a nuclear weapon may be the biggest threat facing mankind. Because if they have it, so will Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, South Korea, Philippines, Japan, Australia, and then I don't know how you stop real proliferation at that point.
So in light of this, what does it mean for alliances, not just from a defense standpoint, which we're going to get into more, but also from an economic one?
Well, I think, so the foundation for us, we want to maintain, we must maintain the strongest military in the world. That is the best protection against anything you see today or that you don't see today. And foundational, that's the best economy in the world. They kind of go hand in hand. I remind people, if you want to keep the dollar as the reserve currency, if we're not the preeminent military and the preeminent economy in the world in 30 years, we will not be the preeminent reserve currency. They actually go hand in hand. It's not just an economic kind of issue. On the economic side, my view is a little different than you see this administration. I think economic allies are critical. We have a lot of them. We have a huge common interest. We have a common value system. We have a common interest. We should protect each other. So you talk about all this trade stuff with China. The best protection, in my opinion, is that the Western world bring back in the things it needs for security, which we'll talk about in a minute, but that we have economic relationships that are profound and deep, help our economy and help, I think this is a little bit of a pipe dream, that we should go to Europe and say, if you do the right things, we'll give you one big, beautiful free trade deal. The right things are the Draghi report. We kind of know what they are. They're struggling. They're literally slowly walking off a cliff over time, and they need our help. And so I want to keep it together, and I put Australia, Philippines, Japan, South Korea in there. So I think those economic things are critical, and they're being challenged a little bit. Not that all trade is good; it's not. There are a lot of flaws in trade, but I'd like to make that stronger, not weaker.
And
it would be a great geopolitical home run against potential adversaries, dwarfing all other things.
And you don't think some of the trade deals that are being struck are starting to roll out, or even just this week, negotiations being opened up again for USMCA get us there?
I think they could. I'd like to see them resolved, finished. That we should get them done. Obviously, things that we need to do here, we should do here, which we'll talk about in a second. Things where there's a lot of unfair trade. Surprise, surprise, we've gone on for 100 years. It's not just tariffs, it's limitations, it's regulations, it's cheap loans, it's cheap land, it's cheap subsidies. It's a million different things. Yes, you should counter unfair trade. And tariffs is one way to counter unfair trade, but I think it would be good to get these things to a conclusion. In particular, Canada and Mexico. We have a huge common interest with Mexico and Canada, and we have one big
we have something in interest. We're part of the North American plateau, so join, conform, become state 52. I don't really give a damn what it is that we decide to really make Canada the hat of the United States of America. Point. He just wants everybody to actually just kind of, do what they were doing so he can continue to be rich and, we can all stay poor still.
Eco-economic system, which actually is in all of our benefits. And so I think that could be hugely beneficial. And remember, Canada has oil, gas, lithium, potash. So there's a good geopolitical reason to do it.
Yeah. Before I move on from this, because you mentioned dollar dominance before, I find myself having a lot of conversations about this trend towards de-dollarization. How do you see it?
Well, it's not going to happen because the reserve currency is not. This is an IQ test. You ready? And you can ask anyone in the world, if you can only put all of your money in one country, which one would it be? Well, there's only one that's protected.
There's only one that's protected? Oh, okay. Well, I guess we ain't putting it here in the United States. We've been raided. We've been raided by Benji Skrilla Gaming. Nice. Thank you for that raid. Anybody coming through in that raid, make sure you smash a button. Lick it and flick it. Dimon and Carney get their talking points from the cabal. He's a piece of shit. Stashed most of his assets. And now they sound like Trump. Bullshit. This demons need to go down. That could be a thing. What's up, Hans Diamond Ball? Good to see you, brother.
By the Atlantic and the Pacific, the United States military, the rule of law, the ability to own. When we give you a United States dollar, you can do whatever you want with it. You can start a business, you can buy a home, you can send it to Switzerland, you can do all these various things. That's not true in a lot of countries. So you're not going to take a reserve currency where the government decides what you can do with it, which is with China. China has capital controls. But that's basically what that is. And they need them for a whole bunch of different reasons. So as long as we maintain that strength, and I think it does relate to free trade. So China will become more of reserve currency. Other countries might, but we will still be the predominant one as long as we maintain the predominant economic position in the world. And that is predicated also on the predominant military position. I was in a country, I don't want to mention the name of it, and they were complaining about America and said, you know, we're so concerned about America, we've taken our gold out of America, we've put it in our vaults here. And I looked at them and said, you do realize your vaults here could be taken by 3 armies who aren't that far away. And you know, that's real politics, folks. That's the world. So the notion that you're secure like that, this nation's secure. And so I think people have to think a little bit differently when we talk about foreign economic relations. And
so is he trying to claim that we still have all the gold? Doesn't matter which country it's in right now. We just kind of like we let it go ahead and float around from country to country, from here to there. It's all good. It's all good because eventually we'll just go take it back anyway. Sounds great. Sounds great. We're just going to continue to fight wars.
you know, real politics is the only way to do it. And anything short of that, you're making a mistake.
Okay, so you just mentioned military last year. Very famously here, went viral. You said, shouldn't be stockpiling Bitcoin, we should be stockpiling bullets. A couple months later, you announced the Security and Resiliency Initiative.
Yeah.
It's moving very quickly. How's it going?
It's been fabulous. And you know, if you read what I write and talk, I complain about government a lot, and we should. But I also asked the question.
Welcome to the pond, Benji Skrilla. Welcome. I appreciate that follow. Thank you so much.
What can we do to help? You know, and we're not unique. We're not the only one. A lot of other people do this kind of thing. But we said we already finance all these companies that do security resiliency. We defined it very specifically. It's military equipment, it's productive capability, it's APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, it's rare earths, it's semiconductors. They can be friend sourced, they don't have to be here as long as they are in a safe environment. It's some of the advanced manufacturing where not having it here is a strategic mistake. I go on, and so we said, what can we do? And that's this initiative. And it has 2 big components. One is the 1.5 trillion over 10 years. Well, I think we'll far.
The Kabbalah is junk bullshit. Kabbalah is, Mossad is. The CIA, I mean, there's things. There's a lot of questionable ideas that are out there in this world. 53 likes. Get it.
Mistake. I go on, and so we said, what can we do? And that's this initiative. And it has 2 big components. One is the 1.5 trillion over 10 years. Well, I think we'll far exceed that. And we're doing it not just in the United States, by the way, but with a lot of allied nations. And that's drones, military, missiles, companies, spin-offs, investments. We hired Todd Combs, who's an exceptional investor, to make direct investments where people need money to do things which we think are important for resiliency. Resiliency is different to every nation. You know, for Europe, resiliency includes LNG. They do not have their own LNG supply. They got to get it from us or North Africa. And so, but for us, you know, LNG here is not this case. So we try to be very specific about it. The outpouring has been great. We've hired a lot of dedicated people. We're doing special research, so you know, which we didn't really have, like the rare earth ecosystem, the shipbuilding ecosystem, the API ecosystem, so you can identify where in this very complex chain of stuff that we need intervention to do the right thing. And we're probably going to recommend what I call smart industrial policy. You know, it's reluctant. You know, a lot of my conservative friends, how can you recommend industrial policy? Yes, I don't think government should get involved in a lot of things. It's the only way to solve rare earths, APIs, some of the semiconductor stuff. It can be done where it's not corporations feeding the trough of government. It's got to be consortiums who are doing this to bring stuff back. Rare earths, here's an amazing number. You know how much rare earths we import to the United States of America? Only 200 million.
Only 200 million, but there's certain rare earths that come out of China that only China is currently producing because we have EPA issues where we don't allow certain processes to occur. If we could kind of loosen up some restrictions in a couple places, if you can get along with everybody that's in your cabinet, you can potentially get something passed where we could go ahead and produce those rare earths. But we have to still import them. We still have to import them no matter what, because China's the only one that's just They don't give a damn. They pollute this earth with all kinds of pollution. It's disgusting. What's that? Get over my YouTube side. Not even looking. Oh, it's not the YouTube side. What is that? Why am I not seeing it? Oh, there it is. My chat wasn't moving. Time is for this girl to crawl into bed. Sleep well. Enjoy your rest.
You know, if you quadrupled the cost, and there's other stuff we buy which has rare earths in it, so that's not really the only relevant number. You know, if you quadruple the cost, it would mean nothing to the American economy, but we'd be 100% resilient. So if you have to pay more, you know, your car cost might go up $100. You know, and so, and I can go on and on and on, but to have a company succeed here, we got to give them the chance to have economies of scale, and build the business. We need competitors in those businesses. And we think there are ways to do it where it's the free market is there, and over time it's 100% the free market. And, you know, basically you would have a tariff high enough on rare earths that they cannot come from certain countries, or just a barrier that we will not import rare earths from China. Just plain and simple. It's a unilateral decision to do something like that. And we have to do it quick. It is also true, if you look back, you know, people ask, like, what were we doing? We, all of us, we were asleep at the switch, folks. You know, 10 or 15 years ago, the military, the government, businesses should have said, we can't rely on potential adversaries for things critical for our security. And so admit it. But if you don't admit mistakes, it's hard to fix them. So, I don't like to cry over spilled milk. My rule is roll up your sleeves, get it done. We don't have much time. Suck it up, move quickly. And we need a lot of government proper policy to do this right, including what you all hear about permitting and all this stuff you all know about already.
Okay, I definitely want to get into that too. But first, just to dig a little deeper on what you just said here. I mean, you are a partner to the government on quite a number of these high-profile deals that we've seen in the name of national security here in recent months. Some of them have been very creative. Some of them have included government equity stakes in the companies as well. I mean, how do you respond to the critics who say the government is picking winners and losers? Or this is a slippery slope, or it's state capitalism?
Well, I think you got to go. There is truth to that, but not in every one. I mean, we should have policy we know works, and I can give you a million examples where I think they shouldn't have done it that way, or they could have done it another way. I like the fact they're moving quick. I like the fact they're being creative in the Department of War and the Commerce Department, the Treasury Department. That I like, and they'll morph over time. So I'm not terrified over that, but there's a right way to do it. And the right way to do it is to set up a system that's conducive to getting the right stuff done and probably not picking winners and losers. I can give you examples of how that can be done. I just don't want to waste your time with that right now.
All right. You mentioned permitting. What do you want to see more of in terms of that? How much of that is federal? How much of that is being tied up still by state and local municipalities?
Guys, it's everything. It's bridges and roads and homes and affordable housing. It's bureaucracy. It's woke. It's permitting. It's sewer. It's hookups. It's grids. It is a disgrace. Everyone knows it. Everyone complains about it. Usually when you bring it up, you know, people laugh. That's funny. With that Baltimore bridge that got knocked down 2 years ago, haven't even started yet. You know, grids, haven't really begun it yet. I say, make America's grids great again. But it's really embarrassing. Oh, I have a great suggestion.
Was he like literally just kind of trying to troll Donald Trump at this moment? I say make grids great again. I mean, really? What an ass.
The politicians in the room. Ready? I may write an op-ed on this one, or you can write it yourselves. Like, good policy is free. Take 6 months in Congress. Do not raise revenues or cut expenses. Don't do any of that. Don't get involved in that debate. Just change policy. That makes things better. Housing policy, which I know Franchillo's here, permitting policy, which you all know about, local affordable housing policy, education policy. I think it'll drive growth 1% higher just by doing that. Just by doing it. And we simply don't do it anymore. We're like Europe. We just layer bureaucratic stupid shit on top of other bureaucratic stupid stuff. And it doesn't work.
I mean, why did you change it? You should have, if you want to say stupid shit, say stupid shit.
Higher just by doing that. Just by doing it. And we simply don't do it anymore. We're like Europe. We just layer bureaucratic stupid shit on top of other bureaucratic stupid stuff. And it doesn't work. And it's demoralizing. If you actually analyze these policies, they hurt the lower income people the most. And so they're all done in the name of good, but they hurt the lower income people the most. And so I think we have to get our act together, and hopefully we'll do it.
Yeah, I was going to go in a completely different direction, but now I got to pick up what you're putting down here, Jamie.
Go for it.
Affordability, this idea of a K-shaped economy that's continuing to exacerbate here. I know you're leaning in on this too from the bank's perspective.
Affordability, again, it's not it's affordability. Of course it's affordability. That's a Democrat issue, a Republican issue. The question is, how do you get it effectively? You know, and you can have a lot of policy that you think it's making more affordable. You have less supply. And so, you know, obviously it's a key thing. Just all these other things, you know, you can do them right or you can do them wrong. And we end up in this binary debate about how you do them. But, you know, of course you make them affordable. It's not a K-shape, like one part going up and one part going down. What it really is that the wealthy, the top 70% are doing fine. The middle class has gotten bigger and richer. They have, stocks have gone up, home prices have gone up. They feel good, they're traveling, their confidence is higher than lower income. It's the bottom 30%, where if you look at it over time, their income didn't go up for 25 years. Okay, and they're not really earning living wages anymore for a whole bunch of reasons I won't go through here. And it used to be if you get up in America and even if you go to 10th grade, you get out, you get in a factory or somewhere, earn a living wage, and soon have a family, have a car, have a house. That's not true anymore. And it is incumbent upon all of us to fix that problem. Now that problem, by the way, we've thrown trillions of dollars at it, Democrats and Republicans, and it didn't work. And those people, by the way, when you talk, and we all talk about problems, they have worse crime, worse schools, less affordable housing, worse food, and there are policies that can fix that. And it's not that their wages have stagnated. They still have jobs, but they're not seeing the opportunity, and they're angry about it. And then they see governments wasting tremendous sums of money, picking winners or losers. Even my Democratic friends, when I ask them, do you believe if we gave $1 trillion to the federal government, anyone would be better off? It's just not possible. It would end up in all these special interest groups, and it'd be a big potty that they give to folks. It's policy. It's education policy. It's housing policy. It's infrastructure policy. It's crime policy. And that stuff works done right. And there are a lot of examples. If you read Fowler's wrote that book when he went to 50 cities, none bigger than Columbus, about how they're building river walks and bringing in businesses and improving their schools. Good policy works, and it's got nothing to do, in the most part, for Democrat and Republican. It's just good policy.
Well, we just talked.
I mean, he's got a point there. The unit party that's there, it doesn't matter which one it is. Good policy be good policy. And if you can get it to actually fix things, sure. Otherwise, I mean, shit is what it is. 54 likes, appreciate that. Y'all smashing it. Get that. What up, Jason?
Talked about how JP Morgan is looking to enable this on the military and defense side, defense industrial base, industrial policy side. How's America's biggest bank looking to enable us on the affordability side, on the American dream side?
Yeah, and so I met with the Mayor Mondani the other day, and I said everything I wanted to say, but but one of the things I was saying, like, what do we do? Like, what does a bank do? And so I walked in the front door. We have a big flag in the new headquarters. I salute that flag every morning. I told him, I salute that flag every morning, and your parents came here for the same reason my grandparents came here, were mostly Greek immigrants who never finished high school, for the freedom and justice that this country means. And that if you opened up America's borders, billions of people would move here to be American. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I told them we bank cities, schools, states, hospitals, countries, mortgages, small business, and we do the best we can. We make mistakes. We pay our people well. They all get medical, dental, Pilates, and so we're good citizens. We pay a lot. We take care of people, and policy should be done well.
That's his daily routine. A little bit of medical, some dental. Let's go do some Pilates.
So we announced this other thing called the American Dream Initiative, which is mortgages and affordable housing, helping small businesses, financial education. We have a lot of branches in lower income neighborhoods, teach people how to save money and how to open accounts, work skills, which we've already talked about, which have to be done locally. And so we're just doubling down on what we already do, and we just set targets for ourselves. Can we do more? And so take small business, for example. We bank 7 million. We're going to make it 10. I'm convinced we'll get there. We have to gear up for it. We got to hire more people, more branches, get more, small business bankers and things like that. And out of that, we get a lot of ideas that germinate that work. Sometimes they don't always work. But I just want to point out, because it may be the most important thing of all, is to reignite the American dream type thing. Is I remind people that the Constitution is a legal document. But the principles on which it's based are the most important thing. Those principles and values are freedom of speech, free religion, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness to them did not mean, are you happy? It meant have a purpose. You could be an artist, you could be a farmer, you could be a military officer, you could be a caregiver. It meant to make the world a better place, to try to create equal opportunity for people. And we don't teach those values anymore. And they are the foundation that made this country great. And and all these schools, I've looked at them now. You look at some of the colleges and even high schools, they don't teach a lot of American history. And you can say, in America, those values are still extraordinary. Why 4 billion people come?
It's because they freaking cut it all out. They cut it all out, they removed it, and they started teaching diversity, equity, and inclusion bullshit. They're like, oh, we don't need to teach history. We don't need to teach them about the things that were there before them. Because if they know about that stuff, they learn, and it's easier to vomit the same unrests over and over again and make things happen. Because history repeats itself so much easier if you don't know that history was there in the first place. Don't teach them, they'll be all right.
here. It doesn't mean we didn't have flaws.
Retarded bullshit.
I don't know. I've read a lot of history. I haven't read one country that didn't have flaws, not one. And of course, you should acknowledge them and try to fix them if you can. And that's part of the American dream. Fixing the bottom 30%, lifting up everybody, creating equal opportunity. I think that would dramatically reduce polarization and anger.
I mean, I asked her sisters in my prayers. When it comes down to it, let's hope that things. As sad as it, because it's at such a late stage, we all know better. We all know better, and it's really sad for him, my friend. I hope things get better, and it's going to be rough.
Which you see all over the place, and so we're doubling down on that too, and we're quite unabashed about it.
The tax policy piece of this specifically, last week Jeff Bezos was on CNBC, made a lot of news, basically said bottom 50% of Americans should not pay federal income tax. Government doesn't have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem. That he'd be potentially more open to paying taxes if it meant the money was actually going towards the greater good here. It kind of reminded me a little bit of some of the comments we've heard from you in the past, especially when I think about things like, earned income tax credit.
Yeah. So first, when I saw Jeff doing that, I'm saying, thanks, Jeff. God bless you. Get involved in the debate. You may not agree with everything he's saying, but I like the fact he's saying stuff, and he cares enough about our country to actually get on there, because a lot of people just simply don't do it or even think about it very much. And tax is very complicated, okay? So I generally agree, and if you look at the bottom, the 100,000, they don't pay that much anyway, so you got to be a little careful. They're all different types of taxes. You got your sales tax, and you got real estate taxes, and some drive bad behavior and all that, and it all should be kind of looked at. I like the earned income tax credit, which today as it stands, if you're a single parent making $14,000, the government gives you $7,000. At the end of the year, in a check. Some people are entitled to it, don't get it. If you have no children, they give you like $700. I would take that, the $14,000, I'd make it $12,000. I'd get rid of the child requirement. You're working, you'll go home with $26,000. If you're two parents, you have $52,000. And the reason I like it is because first, I think it would pay for itself. We know one thing about jobs: they create dignity. That first rung in the ladder. When I hear people making fun of burger flippers, a lot of those burger flippers end up owning and running McDonald's. They're proud of what they accomplished. A lot of our forefathers came here, and that's what they did when they got here. But that first rung leads to a second rung. Jobs lead to the money would go to the person, so it's not big government design where you can buy potato chips and soda or not. They would spend it on their families and their homes. They spend it locally. It might foster local restaurants. They might buy more insurance or a tutor for the kids or something like that. And it would lift up those economies. But it also has the great virtue of bringing people into the workforce, making work pay more. And we know one thing about jobs: better social outcome, more household formation, less crime, less suicide, less recidivism. So if you actually did the full analysis, which is hard to do, and we really haven't, I guarantee you more than pay for itself. And that would cost like another $50 billion. If they did that, I think people would be willing to pay as long as it went to them. If it's going to go to Congress to decide who to give it to, no one's going to want to pay extra money in taxes.
Let's shift gears to monetary policy. We got a new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh. How do you see this new regime taking shape, especially when you have a bond market that, according to some investors, is pricing in a Warsh effect?
I'm not sure that's true. So first of all, high quality guy, experienced, knows markets, was at the central bank, he was at the New York Fed when we were going through the great financial crisis. It's a fresh look. I think it's good. I like his views. I mean, the Federal Reserve did in fact get involved in a lot of stuff that they should not have, in my view. And
see, now I like Kevin Warsh even less, because this guy just said straight out, I like his views. Fucked.
Independent on monetary policy, not independent on regulatory policy. And when they did regulatory policy, they violated the Constitution. There were no cost-benefit studies, no analysis, no other stuff they're supposed to do, and that was wrong. And I like Jay Powell too. I'm not just saying that. When I look at my own institution, I often say the same thing. You know what? In hindsight, we shouldn't have done that.
This guy's just a moron, though. So I mean, whatever.
And so I think they should take a fresh look. They were the adults in the town. They still are, but they're better off looking at the financial system as a whole. Let the OCC do more regular than the banks. Reduce all this. They were getting into climate and DI and stuff like that. We've been adding year after year after year. You wouldn't know this. Rules and regulations on top of rules and regulations. I think you can make the system safer and let banks do what they're supposed to do. Make more loans, create more liquidity, have more intervention in the markets by the people who should do it. And the Fed put themselves in the position where you have any kerfuffle, they have to do something. I think that's a huge mistake. So I think he's right about relooking at that. And I think he's right about reducing the size of their balance sheet. We had too much QE, and we still don't fully know the effect of $10 trillion of borrowing and $8 trillion of QE. And I'm not sure that those things play out over a year or 12 months, or even a 5-year period. To reduce the size of the balance sheet, he's got to change some of these requirements. My view, when we talk about regulations, is we should talk about better. I think you can let banks lend more, create more liquidity, and make them safer. I'd be much tougher in certain rules, and I'd be much easier in other ones. But the way it works out there is every rule is important, as if it's the only rule that's going to save a bank from failing. And so I think he'll do a good job. Now, I don't think it's in the market what he can do, because remember, he's one person. He's walking in a room probably right now. There are 12 people at the table. They're smart people. They're mostly economists. And they're going to say, Kevin, we'd like to hear your ideas, and let's think about it. Let's review these things. So it's going to take study. They're going to take time. So there's almost no chance he can actually change anything in 6 months. And he needs the time. So in the meantime, the environment change that he's entering into. We have more inflation. So we'll see. And he's smart. He's got to figure out how he wants to navigate the environment and the new Fed governors.
How sticky do you think that inflation is? How much does it actually truly put something like rate hikes on the table?
So when the Fed says data, you always think, of course they're data dependent. And in some ways they're a fast follower. When inflation went up, they raised rates. Sometimes they look at what they think future data might be, and they can act anticipatory. Very hard to do, but they have done that. It's like if the government's going to spend another $1 trillion, they can act in anticipation of that they think it's going to be another $1 trillion, something like that. So I think there are inflationary forces out there are more than other people think. And I'm not saying it's going to go dramatically up. I don't know. It is ticking up. You can put Iran in there, and food, healthcare is going up. For us, it's going up 10% a year, and we think it's going to have this year and next year, by the way. But it's, the remilitarization of the world is kind of inflationary. AI spending in the short run is inflationary. Restructuring of trade fundamentally has an inflationary component. Restriction of immigration has an inflationary component. $2 trillion of spending. The economists tell me, well, no, it's $2 trillion last year, $2 trillion this year. It's not inflationary. I don't agree with that. I think that there's a cumulative effect of spending all this money, which the die may have been cast, that will cause future inflation in a way we do not understand. So the notion that somehow that we spent all this money and it's fine. I think we are too comfortable. That's true. So I look at this long list of stuff, and obviously oil prices and food prices. So I hope it doesn't go up much. But talking about interest rates, the 10-year bond is set by the market. It's at 4.5%. That may be the right equilibrium right today based on what people know. But remember, equilibrium prices and what happens are two different things. And if you had inflation at 2%, the short rate should be 3.5%. So the notion you could take the short rate down a lot when inflation is more like 3.5% or 4%, I think it could easily hit 4%, later this year. So, we'll see. Hopefully it'll be okay and manageable. But if you read history books, that isn't always the case.
Meantime, we do have equity markets at record highs. You've seen, especially the ARA parts of the market. I think about, not to single out a company, but the stock has gone parabolic. Micron, record time hitting $1 trillion market cap here. What does that say about the market versus this AI infrastructure build out?
Look, I view the market as exuberant. And I've seen this before. Of course, exuberance can go on a long time, and it's not bad. Sometimes, earnings are up 15, 20% this year, and a lot of these companies have huge order books, so it may be justified. But there is also hype in some of the stuff. You see hype in other commodities too, and then credit spreads are very low. So I look at all that as actually a risk. So it makes you feel good, but if something goes wrong, those asset prices can come down. Interest rates are gravity to asset prices, so it's a risk. I'm not terrified about it. We can handle whatever it is. When we look at risk, we look at the range of potential outcomes. We can handle it. So JP Morgan can handle rates at 2%, rates at 8%. We're not betting our company in either one, and I can give you probabilities of those things, but which is more of an intellectual exercise than anything else. And so we'll see.
SpaceX IPO, thoughts?
Well, I visited SpaceX. It's extraordinary. I mean, the company, you could talk about values and all that, but which I can't. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary what they've done. I think it was 100 launches last year. They're reusable parts now, so the cost per launch, the cost per satellite is literally coming down like this. So I wish these guys and Blue Origin, I wish them the best. I mean, they're inventing stuff that can, change humanity for the better.
How do you think it speaks to what we're seeing in terms of the IPO pipeline, and also perhaps just what the environment is if it's shifting for companies to go public?
Just watched Blue Origin just explode the other day. So when it comes down to it, things going to come down. Now they got to rebuild that pad, bro.
Like here, when you think about things like changes to methodology for index inclusion and maybe changes to lockup periods and some of the other stuff that's afoot.
In general, I put that all in the minor category.
Okay.
Just so you know. I mean, you guys are going to buy or not buy. You're going to look at that stuff. You can decide it makes sense. And, I always think corporate governance should be done right. And so when you look at some of these things, you got to say which fair to you. If you're a buyer or a partner of mine or an investor in a company, how would you treat it? But right now, markets are wide open. The M&A markets are booming. Equity markets are booming. But I do remind people, and debt markets relating to M&A are booming. So debt markets, there's a certain amount we just constantly refine. There's also an amount that's episodic, is based on M&A type of activity. But ECM is kind of the tip of the spear. And if you look at ECM, it can close and open pretty quickly. I mean, I've got in 2022 we had 400 IPOs in America, and the next year we had 20. I mean, it was just dramatic like that. So that is often based on sentiment, short-term values, the specific stocks themselves.
Yeah, we're. They're flashing the clock on me right now. I'm going to just a little bit longer here, just a little bit of a lightning round. Biggest risk that's not getting enough attention?
So the geopolitics of how the free world, how this plays out in the next 20 years.
Okay. Given the fact that the bank has moved forward with some crypto products, adopting some aspects of blockchain, has your opinion about cryptocurrencies changed?
It's not about cryptocurrencies. We're one of the biggest users of blockchain. I think blockchain's been talking about it for 15 years. Okay, we're still talking about it. I do think it'll replace financial market infrastructure. We have a JP Morgan deposit coin. We can already move money 24/7. But I do think, when crypto folks point out the weaknesses, they're right. You can do a lot of change to make it better. FedWire could be, the FedWire is 5 days a week
Welcome
and
to the
10 hours a day. It
pod,
could be, why not 6 days a week, 20 hours a day? And real-time payments have a huge benefit for people. All true. Cross-border costs too much, and we will be part of fixing that. And I'm not that worried about stablecoins. All I've ever said about that is if you have them, they should have the same rules and regulations as us. AML, BSA, KYC, insurance, disclosures, liquidity, transparency, social requirements, which we have. Just a level playing field is all we ask them, that kind of thing. And I do think it'll change some of that stuff. Not worried about it.
Okay. Deal making. You made some news earlier this week when you said that the bank might be acquisitive here to the tune of $10 to $20 billion. Anything more you want to add?
I'm shocked that people get shocked. I just don't understand.
Problem, though it's a great video, is I'm having a problem. Is I'm getting towards the end of my rope, whatever, for this particular stream. I'm like, what am I at? Like, it's like almost going on 8 hours. I mean, it's find all the things, put it together, and then go and watch it all, do all the things, talk about it, try getting stuff done. You really seriously try and doing that is difficult. I tried to keep myself, I'm like, I'm going to put myself at 12-hour period or whatever. Shit. I don't know if I can make it another, 4 hours. I might make it another hour. I want to listen to this other thing that come out of Bessent. He was also at this economic forum. And I think it's of something of significance that we should listen to. There you go, 56 likes. Awesome. What up, 8-Bit? Good to see you.
It. We have a lot of excess capital. We've always been very clear that we've deferred deploying it in our business. I do believe we can do that. I can't do it all at once, but we earn very good returns, and we're going to deploy it serving clients around the world, the way we serve clients today in payments and asset management and capital raising. Of course, we should be thinking about acquisitions. Can you imagine ACO saying, absolutely not, no chance, never do it. So there's not one in mind, but I was thinking this morning about buying you guys, Versant. You look cheap to me, and we would probably pay the talent more than you're paid by them, just so you know. But yeah, there might be something out there. But the other thing, as a management tool, you always get smart just by looking and thinking. Why are people doing things? Why a lot of people are doing better than us in a lot of areas. So when we have our management meetings, you can imagine. I don't focus on, my God, we were number 1 in X. I focus on, why are we number 4 in Germany in this? Why didn't we build Stripe? Why didn't we have a better market-making system like Citadel? Why can't I want Chase UK to be like Revolut, which is worth $75 billion? Can we do that? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? And so we should always be, and looking at acquisitions, I love the fact we do organic growth. It's hard, banker by banker, branch by branch, system by system, country by country, client base by client segment. That's what we do. I think we have huge opportunities, but inorganic, which is hard. I've done tons in my life, but you should always be thinking, is there something that can really enhance your businesses?
Cockroaches? You looking for more?
You're talking about bureaucracy?
Oh, sure.
Oh, cockroach and credit.
Cockroaches, yeah.
No, I'm not.
You talked about it in terms of private credit, but just in general.
I don't think private credit is 1.7 billion. Bank syndicated leverage loan is 1.7 billion. High yield is 1.7 billion. Investment grade is 15 trillion. I mean, those are 1.7 trillion. Investment grade is 15 trillion. Mortgages is like 13 trillion. It's not systemic. I do think when we have a credit cycle, because there have been weakening standards in underwriting and transparency and marking, I do think you'll see credit perform worse than people expect. That's all. I don't think it's systemic. I think there will be people in private credit, and there will probably be people in banks who do far worse than the average. That's happened in every credit cycle. And then people will be yelling and screaming. I think so I'm not worried about it. And we bank them. We do a lot of business with them, mostly because it's arbitrage related.
I'm not worried about it because they're going to do it anyway. They're going to run and scream and cry because they just lost their ass. It sounds good.
The type of stuff which I object to, but we do it too for a whole bunch of different reasons. And I think when I tell the regulars, when you have a lot of arbitrage taking place, it should open your eyes. And it often leads to problems down the road. So not worried about it. We'll see.
Okay, last question. I'm not going to ask you about succession. I'm not going to ask you about running for public office. I'm going to ask you what your legacy is. What do you want that to be?
I grew up, and I'm sure a lot of people have the same thing where, the values were have a purpose in life. And, my brother's a teacher. My other brother was a physicist. My dad was a stockbroker. I read Graham and Dodd, the big thick one, when I was like 17 years old. But there was no push. But it was also work hard, do the best you can, make the world a better place, don't allow bullies, treat them with respect. And all I want my legacy, at least related, and my family is the most important. My family is the most important. You know, that love and respect and what I give and get, that's the most important. I now have 8 grandkids, 3 lovely kids, and a wonderful wife, and I'm lucky. You know, and I count my blessings for that. My wife would say I don't thank her as much as I should. So that's number 1. My country's number 2. Bar none, I'm deeply devoted to helping fix these problems, whatever it takes kind of thing, in my view. But for the company, I just want that gravestone to say, you know, when people visit, we're better off to that son of a bitch.
Jamie Dimon.
Folks, thank you very much. Good luck to each and every one of you.
An honor to be here, and I'd like to thank the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute for inviting me to join you today. Of course, this year's forum carries special significance as we celebrate 250 years of the American story. But milestones of this magnitude demand more than ceremony. They ask something of us. They invite us to reflect not just on the creation of our country, but on its condition. And as we focus today on America's economic future, they compel us to confront and correct decisions that have diminished our sovereignty in recent decades. President Reagan himself understood that renewal begins with reflection. One thing that has made our republic great, he said, is that we don't hide from our mistakes. We learn from them. Then we go on and do things better than we did before. That is the spirit in which I want to speak with you today, with candor and with confidence in our capacity to deliver another 250 years of American economic leadership. The truth is that for too long, America had been asleep. We mistook comfort for strength. We substituted efficiency for resilience and consumption as a measure of prosperity. We told ourselves that so long as goods were cheaper overseas, it did not matter whether factories went dark in Michigan, Ohio, or Pennsylvania. We assumed that supply chains would always function smoothly and adversaries would always behave responsibly, and the invisible hand would correct vulnerabilities that too few in public life had the courage to confront. And while we reassured ourselves with those assumptions, risk accumulated all around us. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of a foundational principle that previous generations understood instinctively. Economic security is national security. For a nation that cannot manufacture, mine, ship, or refine its needs gradually, cedes its strength and sovereignty to others. That is a dangerous dependency for any country. It is an unacceptable one for the United States of America. Now, nations rarely cede their security in a single moment. More often, they drift into dependence through a series of politically expedient decisions. For our part, we made a series of mistakes, some bipartisan, others ideological, and many defended long after their cost became impossible to ignore. One was treating trade policy as though it existed apart from national strategy. We convinced ourselves that we could pursue commercial partnerships in one silo while managing security relationships in another, as if the world would honor these distinctions. But a nation that relies on a rival for critical inputs finances the rise of countries that do not share our interests and allows its productive base to erode while promising to defend the international order, will find sooner or later that these two silos collapse into each other. As damaging as our willingness to extend strategic trust where it had been not earned. China's concessions to the WTO and the granting of permanent normal trade relations were sold to the American people as steps that would level markets and moderate behavior. Instead, we left our workers.
I appreciate everybody smashing it.
To compete against state-led subsidies, excess capacity, and practices that distort trade and undermine reciprocity. We assumed the rules-based system would discipline these behaviors, only to find that in too many sectors it accommodated them. And that in the name of efficiency, we began to celebrate just in time while neglecting just in case. The pandemic did not create our brittle supply chains so much as expose them. Suddenly, the world's most advanced economy found itself partially dependent on foreign suppliers for semiconductors, large capacity batteries, critical minerals, and medicines that we no longer produce here at home. Regrettably, our recovery from the pandemic did not bring reform under the prior administration. Today, the United States still imports most of its rare earth minerals that are essential to the technologies that will shape military and economic power in the 21st century. Only a small share of the active pharmaceutical ingredients that we use in the United States are made here. And American shipbuilding capacity, which once helped to secure victory in war and prosperity in peace, has shrunk to a fraction of global production. So when I say America has been asleep, I do not mean that no one warned us. In fact, many did. Workers warned us when their plants shuttered and communities decayed. Military planners warned us when supply chains narrowed. Manufacturers warned us about subsidized competitors and dump products. Public health officials warned us about pharmaceutical dependencies. The warning lights were glaring all around us. But our political class preferred the comfort of old formulas. Cheaper was always better. Offshoring was inevitable, industrial policy was unfashionable, and strategic dependence was acceptable so long as the cost remained invisible. Beneath every one of those mistakes lay a more basic failure in our philosophy. In reducing economics to consumption, we forgot production. We measured abundance at the checkout counter rather than at the factory gate. We talked about GDP, but not enough about its composition. And we prized low-cost inputs without first asking whether a nation can remain sovereign when it loses command over the things that matter most. A country cannot outsource its industrial commons, ignore strategic concentration, and expect to remain secure. For manufacturing is more than output on a balance sheet, it is a reservoir of practical capability. Engineers and welders, tool and die makers, and logistic networks, plant managers and workers who know how to solve problems on the factory floor. When the ecosystem is strong, a country can adapt quickly. When it is hollowed out, adaptation becomes slower, more costly, and less certain. We saw this during COVID and the scramble for ventilators, masks, and other medical equipment. We saw it again as the war in Ukraine reminded the world that high-intensity conflict consumes weapons and munitions at a pace far beyond peacetime assumptions. Surge capacity cannot be conjured overnight. It must be built before a crisis arrives. And a country that allows its industrial base to shrink in the quiet years should not be surprised when it struggles to replenish stocks in the dangerous ones. In a crisis, the nation with a broad and skilled industrial base has options. The nation that has hollowed out that base only has excuses. America should never again put itself in a position where its security depends on supply chains it does not control, factories it no longer maintains, or skilled trades it failed to preserve.
I don't know why we did it in the first place. Is it for whatever reason any nation would do anything of the sort? Ship all of their manufactured goods out and require that they have to ship that good that they sent out back in. It makes no sense. Somebody was sitting there being like, I need to make extra money. I'm not making enough money. And thought this was a smart idea. We can get cheaper labor there.
That is why the president's agenda matters. Reasonable people can debate
It
the
does
calibration of
matter.
any particular instrument, but the central strategic insight is undoubtedly sound. Trade policy, industrial capacity, and national security are inseparable. And to allow foreign dependencies to degrade any one of these domains is to allow them to define America's future. So on his first day back in office, President Trump issued the America First Trade Policy Memorandum, a sweeping directive to Treasury, Commerce, Homeland Security, USTR, and other agencies to stop treating trade as a technocratic afterthought instead of an instrument of national strategy. Last April, the president declared a national emergency tied to the cumulative effects of foreign trade practices and announced reciprocal tariff actions framed explicitly around national and economic security. Again, people can debate design, sequencing, and scope. Healthy democracies should debate those questions, but no one should miss the larger point. Chronic, non-reciprocal agreements, industrial hollowing, and strategic import dependence are not questions of commerce alone. They are fissures in our country's foundation. A few weeks later, President Trump signed executive action on processed critical minerals and derivative products under Section 232, expressly linking import dependence to risks for national security, defense readiness, and price stability, and economic resilience. Some have tried to weaponize critical minerals against us, but this administration is ensuring they will not succeed. On maritime strength, President Trump signed an executive order to restore America's maritime dominance, established a new Office of Maritime and Industrial Capacity at the National Security Council, and called for a maritime action plan to rebuild U.S. shipbuilding capabilities. This is what it looks like to connect industrial capacity, logistics resilience, workforce development, and national security in one strategic frame. Finally, on pharmaceuticals, President Trump signed an executive order to fill the strategic active pharmaceutical ingredients reserve so that America is never again caught flat-footed when access to critical drug components is at risk. Last month, the White House also highlighted further action to impose tariffs on patented pharmaceutical products while noting parallel Section 232 investigations involving personal protective equipment, medical consumable devices, and robotics. The strategic message is unmistakable. Supply chain resilience in medicine will no longer be an afterthought. This broader reorientation is also visible in the administration's trade agenda for 2026 as we work to secure reciprocity, strengthen domestic production, and align America's external economic relationships with our core national interests. Taken together, these efforts reflect a broader principle that President Trump has articulated clearly. Economic security is national security. But let me be direct about what that doctrine does not mean. It does not mean retreating from the world. On the contrary, it means engaging with it on a stronger...
Quack, it's a duck fact. What up? Good to see you. Lost my glasses Saturday. Doesn't matter that I need a new eye exam either way. I think I need an eye exam as well.
Economic security is national security. But let me be direct about what that doctrine
There's certain things at certain times I notice myself like leaning back or whatever and looking at certain things and being like, closing an eye. Kind of be like, oh, what did he say? Like, what's that name? I get it.
does not mean. It does not mean retreating from the world. On the contrary, it means engaging with it on a stronger, fairer, and more sustainable terms. It does not mean severing ties indiscriminately. It means distinguishing healthy interdependence from dangerous overdependence. It does not mean rejecting efficiency. It means refusing to worship efficiency when efficiency leaves our nation exposed. And it does not mean treating allies and adversaries alike. It means bringing our trading relationships and our security relationships back into alignment by building supply chains with trusted partners where appropriate, rebuilding capacity at home where necessary, and ensuring that the economic architecture supporting American power strengthens American security. Of course, America still holds enormous advantages, among them the world's deepest capital markets, extraordinary innovators, abundant energy potential, leading universities, and unmatched entrepreneurial culture, and workers who can outbuild and outcompete anyone so long as the playing field is fair. All we needed was a government willing to declare that as decline is a choice, renewal can be one too. So yes, while America slept, our vulnerabilities grew. While America slept, too many leaders accepted failed supply chains as the price of modern life.
Howard, foie gras. I mean, maybe that's what you do smell. Rub your nose, loosen everything up on the inside, and then and try again. Maybe.
America slept. We let industrial policy erode and Main Street decay. We tolerated unfairness in the name of stability and conflated market access with strategic success. But America has awakened. We are alert to the fact that a resilient economy is the foundation of a strong republic, that we can measure the health of our economy not merely by what it produces, but whom it lifts, that secure supply chains matter as much as stock indices, that productive capacity is power, that trade policy, industrial policy, and national security policy must all fit together, or they will each fail separately. So let me end where I began, with President Reagan's reminder to identify where we went wrong and to recover our faith in what can go right. If we learn from our mistakes, if we rebuild what we neglected, if we reward production as well as consumption, if we
You read your cue card very, very well.
prize resilience alongside prosperity, as President Trump has been doing, then this country will not simply patch over our vulnerabilities. It will enter a new season of national strength with a more robust Main Street and industrial base than ever before. Safer supply chains, more secure medicines, more reliable access to critical minerals, a revived maritime capacity, a financial system aligned with a national purpose, and trading partnerships that reinforce rather than undermine our security relationships. Indeed, the strength of this republic lies in not denying that the old consensus failed. Instead, we must restore resilience where complacency took hold, rebuild capacity where dependence took root, and above all, recover the confidence to believe a nation that knows how to build, invent, produce, and lead is never destined for decline. While America slept, our vulnerabilities grew, but under President Trump's leadership, we are alert to the risk we can no longer ignore and attuned to the responsibility we can no longer defer. Under President Trump, we have awoken to morning again in America, and our best days, I believe, still lie ahead. Thank you all. I look forward to exploring these themes in further conversation with Larry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for an excellent speech. I was just sitting there thinking, having worked for Reagan many, many years ago, peace through strength. Peace through strength.
Peace through strength.
It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed between those two bookends. And it's a terrific thing. Peace through strength, trust but verify.
Exactly.
And we'll get to it. I want to talk about the industrial economy because your points are very important. The America First trade policy, the economy is booming. But I must ask, as the world is waiting, I guess, for new information. The president is meeting with the cabinet. I'm sure you're plugged into this remotely. How do you read the situation? Are we close to a deal? The last Truth Social I got said basically they're looking at the issues, but the red lines have not changed with respect to denuclearization and no enrichment and reopening the Strait of Hormuz and no money in the next 30 or 60 days. It's a little sketchy, but the whole world is watching. The markets are positively reacting to it, so I thought I'd give you a chance to clarify the situation, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, so the president was very clear in the cabinet meeting what he was looking for on the straits, free and open access, as we saw before February 27th, and that Iran must give up their highly enriched uranium and cannot have a nuclear weapon. And to be clear, I think one of the things that has gone unappreciated and unnoticed here is this is the first time the Iranians have been willing to discuss the nuclear subject. Like, before, we have the right to do this, we have undisputed, and so I think between 5.5, 6 weeks of an incredibly successful military campaign and then Operation Economic Fury, where we have really cut them off, and they are at the end of their tether now financially. I think 40 or 50% of the troops aren't getting paid. Police aren't reporting to the station. Inflation's probably over 200%. They're having to give out food vouchers. They have turned off the internet. So there was an information vacuum. And we'll see. Is the Iranians have engaged as they could. I would point out we did not have regime change, but we changed the regime. The first level leaders decapitated, the second level decapitated, so we're dealing with the third level. And it's very tough, because on one side, we have a theocracy with the clerics. On the other side, we have a thugocracy with the IRGC. And you've got to convince both sides.
You know, I think kudos to you. You are probably the most significant, most powerful, most successful wartime Treasury Secretary, certainly since World War II. You've closed them down. They are our enemies. In fact, Roger Zakheim reminds me, Reagan Institute did a poll, 80% of Americans believe Iran is an enemy of the United States. Now, we're the other 20%.
I don't know who the other 20 are.
They're all New York and Connecticut. I'll leave that aside. But what you have done with the economic fury, you basically turned their water off. Maybe you want to say, how long can they go? They're not meeting payrolls, they're not meeting retirement, they're not showing up for work. You closed down their offshore bank accounts, you closed down their oil operations, you basically closed the whole place down. It's kind of all over but the shouting, it seems to me.
Well, Treasury, we're doing the financial blockade, and the U.S. Navy, you want to talk about a group that hasn't been this active since World War II, it's the Navy.
Yes.
They've done an incredible job. And when I talked to General Kane and the Secretary Hegseth, they said, like, these young people aren't afraid. They want to fight. This is what they signed up for. And some of the precision where they blockaded the Iranian ports with virtually or perhaps zero intrusions have been amazing. Koolfrogg Island, which is the Iranian oil export facility, is shut down.
You basically turned that off.
The blockade did that. We think they have the lowest amount of oil on the water. Their only client is China. And I would point out that the Iranians made a very big strategic mistake, because everyone said, oh, well, the Iranians attacked the GCC and the infrastructure, and that really makes them invulnerable. That on my side of my duties, they made my job so much easier, because before, many of our great GCC Gulf allies were a little less than transparent about their banking systems. That, oh, no, we don't have any Iranian oil. And 2,200 the shells and missiles and drones here, 500 or 600 there, all of a sudden it's, oh, here. They have at it. So we've frozen Iranian bank accounts.
After they started getting bombed by Iran.
Yes, but it was a big strategic
mistake.
Failure on the financial side.
And you jumped right in.
And we jumped right in.
Just like Kudlow, just to set, in the middle of a conversation, break out in song. He would.
And the strategic frozen Iranian bank accounts.
After they started getting bombed by Iran.
Yes, but it was a big strategic
mistake.
Failure on the financial side.
And you jumped right in.
And we jumped right in. And they've been very good partners. I believe that we have seized about $1 billion of their crypto. And
just outright seized it.
Just outright grab the wallets. Some of them may be like typing in right now and realize they might not realize that their wallet had been grabbed. And we are working with our allies all over Europe to grab villas and houses and properties. And this is money that's stolen from the Iranian people.
But you've frozen the offshore accounts. I mean, people may not understand that the Revolutionary Guard, they own so many of the businesses. They've been stealing money from the Iranian people for decades and decades and decades.
We think
they're all living high off the hog. You know, retirement accounts and condominiums, God knows where.
We think they were stealing $400 or $500 million a month, divided between 80 leaders.
Now, that can't last. I mean, they're in a heap of financial trouble. And that is your doing. That is your doing, sir.
Well, it's like Woody Allen said when he talked about the mafia. It's a good margin when you consider they don't pay for paperclips.
Okay, I got it. All right, well, anyway, congratulations on all that. Second point I wanted to raise, and you talked at some length about it in your prepared remarks, the economy. The industrial economy is booming, despite gasoline prices and energy prices and the temporary effects of the war. Just some numbers. I mean, with $4.50 gasoline, which I might add is coming down, you're still growing. I mean, nearly 3% consumer growth from the latest numbers year on year. But the most extraordinary thing, and I think this is to your point about the trade reciprocity and the America First and being prepared, Non-defense capital goods, business investment is growing over the past 3 months alone at nearly 19% at an annual rate. We haven't seen numbers like that. 10.5% year on year. So that's quite remarkable. Shipments growing at 12.5%. Profits rising 17%. Productivity almost 3%. Unit labor costs, which is the most basic, in a sense, inflation measure for the entire economy. Unit labor costs last 4 quarters, 1.2%. That's why I can't get too excited about a temporary gasoline pump. I mean, in effect, the trade deficit is narrowing. These one big beautiful bill and other policies have been succeeding.
It's been fantastic, and much of it is what you all did in Trump, the 1.0 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but through, I see Jason Smith here, that he was working a year in advance to get the one big beautiful bill. That did not spring up. I see French Hill, Jody Arrington, they were all incredible in getting this across the line. I remember I went to Mike Johnson, I said, Mike, when do you think you can get this out of the House? And he said, I said, and as one bill. And Larry, I want to give a shout out to you because Dr. Kudlow here said, you must have it as one bill. You cannot bifurcate this because if people start picking and choosing, then it's the end. So Larry insisted on one bill. But Mike, Speaker Johnson, if we want one bill, how do we do it? Or when can we do it? And he said, I think I could have this out by Memorial Day. I said, hold please. I called up Newt Gingrich and I said, could this ever happen? And he said, it's ambitious. Okay, Mike, let's do it. And then as soon as he did that, they called Leader Thune and said, Speaker Johnson says it's going to come out of the House by Memorial Day. You think we could have a July 4th signing? And, okay, and everybody got it done. But I think it just speaks to the power of what we've done. We're never going to have to talk about a tax cut again because these are permanent. And I just think the power of permanence and certainty and knowing that you're going to be able to, like this full expensing just levels us up against so many other countries.
You know, business is not a dirty word. Profit's not a dirty word. The reason that consumers have the income to spend at their kitchen tables, even with this temporary gasoline bump, is the success of these policies. And I think the permanence. We've never seen investment rates like this, probably not since the Reagan recovery from the Carter recession 40 some odd years ago. So supply side economics is working and the America First policies are working. So kudos to you for your implementation. Kudos to the president for sticking with it. Kudos to Jason and whoever else is here. I didn't know you were here. Good to see you. No change in policy. The war will end. We will go back to normalcy on energy.
Look, the war will end. We'll get to the other side of this. The economy has been very resilient through all this. Look, for many families, it's not nothing, but it's been less than $200 in extra the gasoline cost. And I don't have it with me, but all the Democrats want to talk about now is beef and gasoline. I've got a sheet that has the 12 supermarket items. Last year was eggs. And eggs are down 90% now. Beef is highly idiosyncratic now because of some cattle disease down in Mexico and the dynamics of the herd, but chicken's down, many vegetables are down, so this groceries are actually down. So we'll see. But I can tell you, the one thing we're not going to do is what the Biden administration did, where they came out and said, it's a vibe session, American people don't know how they're feeling. That was 21.5% stated CPI inflation. Real wages grew about 17%, so big loss in purchasing power. But our friend Jason Trennert has something, I think it's called the Everyman Index of the Work. Common Man Index, and that was up 35 or 38%. So that was a 15% decline, 16% decline in real purchasing power, and Americans felt that. And the price levels have gotten elevated. It's tough to bring the price level down, but what we can do is add, we can generate real wage growth, which I think we're going to get back to as soon as we're on the other side of this Iran conflict.
So you were mentioning in your talk, we are here at this conference celebrating 250th birthday of America and looking ahead for the next couple of 100 years. I can't help but ask you, are we really going to have a $250 bill with Donald Trump's picture on it? Well, the whole world is waiting.
So for the 150th, there was a Calvin Coolidge coin.
Oh, God, I love that.
With his image on it. We are going to have the image of President Trump on a coin, and there is a proposed legislation in the House to put President Trump on the $250 bill. As Treasury Secretary, I am only mandated to do two things with the design of the currency. At present, it has to be someone who is not living, and it must say, "In God we trust." Do whatever else I want. I think that if you were the president, just like Calvin Coolidge was for the 150th, if you're the president for the 250th, President Trump should be on there. And for any of you who are want to geek out in monetary theory, there's something called seigniorage. So we print, Treasury prints currency, the Fed distributes it, and we have about 2.6 trillion outstanding, and that's a free loan. So we put currency out there, and we don't have to pay any interest on it. So with seigniorage, I think that you get the $250 bill. I think a lot of people are just going to put those away and hold them.
I'm sure it'll be a big
it's a
sell.
good free loan.
I'm sure the demand for it will be huge. The other side, I mean, we've got a lot of optimism, I think, at this conference, and I know I'm very optimistic. And the theme of going from Reagan through Trump and having you here to speak to the Trump economic policy is very, very important. The other thing I wanted to mention briefly, before I get to the Fed and our new chairman, is the Trump savings accounts, which I think really is a game changer. That is a major, major piece of legislation.
I think that this is the most important the government benefit for young people since the GI Bill. And 38% of Americans have no exposure to our great equity market. They don't participate in the innovation, the dynamic U.S. economy, great management, many the managements who I see here today. And for them, it is just a foreign concept. So with the Trump accounts, any child born during President Trump's term, they get a $1,000 seed investment from Treasury for these, and they're going to go into low-cost index funds, and they will be able to see every day on their phone what the account's doing. Folks with children under 18, families with children under 18 can open a Trump account, and they put up to $5,000 in there that'll compound tax-free until age 18. At age 18, they roll it into a traditional retirement plan or take it out to start a business for education, down payment on a home. And the other thing we're seeing with these Trump accounts is that we are seeing some of our great philanthropists, Michael and Susan Dell, $6.25 billion to American children.
Remarkable.
As President Trump said, when Michael made the announcement, Michael, $250 million is a lot, 6.25. So, and that is for young people who are from the bottom 80% of the economic zip codes. So it's going to be about $250 for 80% of the American children.
Learn a piece of the rock they never thought possible. They might even learn a little bit about capitalism and business along the way.
Well, I think we're creating a whole new class of shareholders. And in nutrition, there's this idea of a food desert. You don't have access to good food. I've done a lot of work on financial literacy. I push for it, and I think that there was the idea of a financial desert that if people don't have exposure, many of them they can't open a Charles Schwab account or an E-Trade or any of the Robinhood or any of the others. So this is going to give them an account. Rather than giving a toy for someone's birthday, you cut the price of the toy in half and give the toy and then put $20 into that account. So you can constantly top it up.
It's worth a lot more than a welfare check. It's worth a lot more every way you look at it.
At Treasury, went up yesterday, to encourage all of you to go, trumpaccounts.gov. We have 5, maybe we might be up to our 6 learning modules, because these are families who've never participated, many of them have never participated in the stock market before. Look, I was a kid from South Carolina, a small town, and I was growing up, I just knew something bad happened on Wall Street in 1929. Like, that's what I knew about Wall Street. And now, I think they're going to be able to see it on their phone, they'll sit around the dining room table, their families will add to it. Many states are going to top these up. So we've got 20 states so far that I think are going to add to these. And I do think it is a new kind of philanthropy. Because now we have all these foundations, a lot of them do good work, but there's a lot of bureaucracy. They have buildings, they have boards, they have dinners. If you want to give directly to the children of America, just give to the Trump accounts.
So you just had breakfast with our new Fed chairman, Kevin Warsh. How was that?
It was great. It was President Reagan would say it was a new day at the Fed. So we now have the Warsh Fed, the Treasury Secretary.
We now have a Warsh Fed. I mean, it's legit. It's fine. It's fine. It doesn't need to be any other special person that really might do a good job. We'll be just fine with Warsh.
Fed chair have lunch or breakfast every week. It's a home game and an away game. So I did the away game at the Fed. Their food's much better because they don't have a budget. They print their own money.
Apparently not.
Apparently not. One hears. But it was good. Look, it's the renewal and change is good. And I think we are going to see a new sheriff in town. I think we are. I'm not going to get out ahead of the chairman, but he said he's going to get rid of forward guidance. So I think I would expect.
You approve of that?
100%. 100%. And I also think we're going to get back to basics in terms of accountability, credibility, and what's the purpose of the Fed? Because, Larry, for your career is longer than mine, but for a long time, the Fed just ran in the background. It wasn't, oh, it's Fed Day, it's the Fed meeting, cover the press conference, all-day event, all these governors out giving speeches and kind of popping off. And I think we are going to see much more focus, much more, a lot more credibility. And at the end of the day, financial markets.
Personally, I have kids and whatnot, and when I filed taxes, it had me send something to an email, whatever, for that. He's 6. He's 6, so I mean, I don't know if my wife actually signed him up for that yet. She'll have to go and take a look.
It's all about credibility.
I know
I'll
the
have to go
president
take a
said
look.
right at the beginning, as soon as Kevin was confirmed, that he's on his own. There's really no pressure to move interest rates in one way or another, that you just have to trust, he's going to trust his Fed chairman. And I just wanted to be sure that the Treasury Secretary echoed those views.
100%. That the president made the decision. I ran the process. The president made the decision. I never put the thumb on the scale for Kevin Warsh, who I'd known for 20 years. I think he's an incredible choice. And the president got there for all the right reasons. And the president understands that the more credible you are, the more work the financial markets will do for you.
So no pressure at the moment.
Look, again, everyone, a lot of the publications wanted to be alarmist, and to the extent I had any success in my 35-year Wall Street career, it was usually doing the opposite of what was on the front page. And when I saw over the past couple of weeks, what a terrible time to start up as the Fed chair, I was like, no, it's a great time. Yeah. It's a great time. Interest rates have spiked. Inflation has spiked. The tough thing would have been to have come in in February, and the market was pricing in 2 or 3 rate cuts for the year. Inflation looked like we were going to come back down to target. Growth was high. Much better to come in now. And look, you all can be the judge. I'm not saying whether it's the causation or the correlation, but rates peaked the day before Chair Warsh was sworn in.
And also, tell me if this, I think I'm noticing during this Iranian war episode, et cetera, with all of the good things that are going on, the dollar is actually improving. And if I'm not mistaken, you yourself have been a strong advocate of maintaining the dollar as a reserve currency. And I know in the first term when I served, the president was always a strong advocate to maintain the dollar as a reserve currency. Has any of that changed?
Nothing's changed. And again, I was in the currency market for 35 years, and I think people have the wrong notion of what a strong dollar means. Strong dollar isn't the price on the screen every second, every minute, every day, every week. What a strong dollar means is that we are doing the right things to set our economy on a good course, that people will want to hold dollars, that they feel safe and secure, and that their money will get back to them, that they will have real returns. And I think we've done that. Whether it's through trade policy, tax policy, or energy policy, the United States, President Trump, with his policies, has made the United States the best place. Whether you want to be in the liquid markets or to come build your factory, you will have great certainty. You will have on tax, you will have great certainty on energy, and you will have great certainty on our workforce.
So we appreciate all these remarks. The time is short. I've got a TV show to do. You're going to speak with my colleague and dear friend Maria in a little while. I don't think the president has made a decision. I was just looking on my phone. I could be wrong, but I don't think a decision has come out. I just wanted to ask you, there's in all likelihood no ruling out of further military operations, combat operations, kinetic operations, if the Iranians continue to misbehave. There's no ruling of that out, is there?
Everything we have done since the ceasefire began has been defensive. And Admiral Cooper, General Kane, Secretary Hegseth have been very clear about that. And again, what's important to realize here is just as in our government, we have hawks, doves in between, they have people who want to keep up a quixotic fight, and then they have people who want to settle. So they are also hashing it out. But there's 3 scenarios. We have the deal. We don't have the deal, but we just maintain the blockade, and we keep squeezing them. And I think every day that goes by, much worse for them. Or we go back to kinetic action, and President Trump, you know it, Larry, I know it, he likes to create the most leverage for himself.
You're going to keep the blockade, financial and economic embargo going.
We'll see. That it'll be anything that's taken off is taken off slowly. There'll be milestones that the Iranian regime would have to meet. And I can tell you, we put more sanctions on yesterday. We sanctioned their 2 airlines. We've got some other financial targets. There's a lot more that we can do if we have to. And there's some things that we can take off to help the Iranian people.
Secretary Scott Bessent, good friend, thank you for your service. Thank you for your good works for America. We appreciate it.
So then, for what it is, I find it very interesting how corrupt and evil each and every single last one of these people really are. I'm going to get the fuck out of here. I'm tired. Go raid somebody. Go find somebody that's just kind of, I'm not sure. Not sure who's doing what. Let's see. What's this? Because it doesn't really matter. Raids are fun. Raids are good stuff. They're intended to help each other out. Follow, lick it, flick it, do all the wonderful things. Smash them here, smash them there. Wherever we raid to. Get all that shit done. I'll come back tomorrow night by 8 p.m. Mountain. Everybody knows better. By 8 p.m. Mountain, hopefully I'll be with you sooner and have a bunch of stuff to go along with a good show. Tonight was fun. I appreciate everybody coming through here. We'll go right out. We'll go right out and get out of here for the day. Finish your raid. Oh, stop it. I think that's the one that gets people is it said it failed. Yeah, you just got to try it again. Later.